And first up is County Chair. All right, so we have 3 minutes for opening remarks. In ballot order, Michael is first.
Hi, my name is Michael Slavak. Please forgive me if I'm a little slow today. I've been with that bug this week, so I'm not on top par. But my name is Michael Slavak. I'm running for Fayette County Chairman. I'm presently on a small business in Ellinger. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce there, and I'm also the secretary of the Ellinger Sewer and Water Corporation. I've worked with the Ellinger Sewer and Water Corporation now for the last 3 years. I've been able to get funding from Texas Water Development Board, the General Land Office. We have over $3 million improvements coming into that. You can ask anybody in the town of Ellinger, since I've worked with the chamber, what we brought in, what we've done, we've improved it 100%. I plan on doing the same thing for this party. Getting more people engaged, getting younger people engaged, raising funds so we can have the publicity out there and show people that we are a strong county. You know, when you've got 10 times more Beto signs in this county than you do for the current governor, then you've got a problem there. And that's something we got to change. Get people recruited, get them out there and working. I just think I can do a good job. I'll work hard on the elections. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Next up is Deborah.
All right, my name is Deborah Frank, and I am your Fayette County Republican Party Chairman. I'm the only candidate in this race with grassroots experience and the only one who has a complete understanding of what the chairman position demands in personal time and expense, the political processes, and especially the election process. I've learned it firsthand. Since joining the party in 2010, I have been a diligent grassroots worker. I have block walked for Republican candidates and worked campaign headquarters. I hosted Senator Colcore's first meet and greet in Fayette County at my home after our county was moved into her district. I have served as a Republican Women Chairman, President, Election Judge, Precinct Chair, Activities Chair, Vice Chair, and now County Chair since 2017. This is my fourth time managing our primary elections. As many of you have experienced through your church, civic, or other volunteer organizations, the most effective leaders are those who have risen up through the ranks, learning the functions of the organization through personal experience. I've done that. I've attended every county and state convention since 2010, representing Fayette County and helping to determine the state party rules, platform, and legislative priorities. I have built excellent relationships with our elections administrator, SD 18 committee reps, and our legislators. I'm an effective leader because I'm inclusive and responsive. I am open to new ideas from our membership and especially the executive committee, which is your precinct chairs. The true power of the party lies with your precinct chairs. In reality, party is a misnomer. The work we do is serious, and I take my responsibilities as chairman seriously. The duties of the county chair are outlined in the Texas Election Code, directing how to manage the primary elections. This includes accepting ballot applications and filing fees, coordinating with our local elections office, scheduling ballot draws, filing reports with Secretary of State, recruiting election judges and clerks, observing the ballot counting on election night. The chairman's role is to support all Republican candidates in the primary, then the winning candidates in the general elections. Our primary elections have run very smoothly under my leadership. I'm running for county chair to ensure the continued success of this county's Republican primary elections and give voters every opportunity to educate themselves on the candidates and issues. Hosting candidate forums like this one is one way we accomplish that. I'm honest, experienced, organized, professional, responsive, and dedicated to running informed and fair elections. I ask for your continued support and your vote in the March 5th primary. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to move on to the prepared questions. Just as a reminder, it's a 1.5 minute response per question, starting in ballot order. So we're going to start with Michael. First question is, explain how your personal background, education, and work experience make you the best candidate for chair.
I am very much 100% of people. I don't wait for them to come to me, I'll go to them. I've got 10 years military experience, which was good, and I run my own business. I go for it on something. When I say I want to do something, I do it. I'm very open to ideas. I mean, there's so many things you could do to bring up publicity for this party. Just small things. And my personal background, like I said, I'm an organizer, I'm a hard worker, I'm a manager, but I'm also one of those, I do not micromanage. If somebody knows what they're doing, get out of their way, let them do their job. Don't sit there and harp on them. And that's what I like doing, is having people around me that can work. That's why in Ellinger, certain things like the bingo, we've increased it tenfold since it ever started, because we don't micromanage. We let people do their duties and put them in spots where they can. And that's what I plan on doing with this party.
Okay, I worked for AT&T, started out as Southwestern Bell, then morphed into AT&T. Anyway, worked for them for 37 years and worked my way up from long distance operator to the time I retired. I was team leader for second level project management team. I learned to be very customer focused, dedicated to my job. I was sought out for promotions and special projects just because people knew that if I started something, I would finish it, I would do it right, and I would get it done on time. After moving to Fayette County, a few years later, I retired from AT&T and went to work for Bot's Title here in Grange. But again, my customer service focus was the main priority, doing the job right and on time. I always honor my commitments, and I'm responsive, and I think those skills have served me well throughout my professional career and as county chair, as well as in my personal life.
Question number 2, we're going to go to Deborah first. What was your motivation to seek this position?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I've been involved in the grassroots of this Fayette County Republican Party since 2010, and working up from a grassroots volunteer to precinct chair to vice chair to now chairman. I feel that I've really accomplished a lot with this party. When I first became vice chair in 2014, we had only one county seat was filled by a Republican. Now, after this primary, all 19 county elected offices will be held by a Republican. We've increased voter turnout, and I just want to continue those accomplishments.
Unity and build. To me, in my opinion, the Republican Party in Fayette County is kind of split. There's not a lot of, if you notice, there's not, when you have events, already elected officials attending them. There seems to be a diversion there. I can't quite explain it. Also building upon it. As our youth grows up and moves away, we have a lot of people moving in. So in 10 years, it is going to flip. Script is going to start to flip. We've got to start getting younger people involved, and that's been what I've said from the beginning. When you go to college, the first thing they're going to do is try to indoctrinate you into more of a liberal way of thinking. All your papers, everything. My goal is to get the younger people involved, bring them into the party, and also unite with more of the candidates, past, present, and future. Thank you.
Question number 3. Michael, you first. Describe your experience and participation in local elections and party activities.
Only party activity I can really say, I went to Trump rallies, but no, but in all seriousness, local activities, I'm very civic minded. I'm, like I said, president of Chamber of Commerce. I worked my way up to that point. I became a board member for the Ellinger Sewer and Water, and I basically am the face for them in Austin, dealing with the TCEQ and things such as that. Local elections, I've tried to endorse people, help people, put signs out and everything like that. As far as being affiliated straight with the parties, I have not as much because I've been concentrating on my hometown. Once I've got my ducks in a row there, I feel that I can spread my wings a little more and help more on the Republican side of the county chair part. Thank you.
Since I got involved in the party in 2010, I believe it was the next year I first volunteered to be an election judge. I worked in several different precincts wherever they needed me. I've worked in LaGrange, I've worked in Amosville, other locations. But starting out as an election judge, then you learn the actual election process. From there, as vice chair, I have helped with the election office with every single election, whether it be helping to man the phones in the office or running supplies if they're getting low on ballots, something like that. I've always helped out. Now that I'm county chair, of course, I can't really get that involved in outside of the primary elections as far as helping, but I'm still there to observe the return of the ballots and the ballot counting for the primary elections. So again, I've attended or participated in one way or another in every single election, be it primary or general election, presidential election, amendment elections, every one since 2010.
Question number 4, start with Deborah. Which planks of the Republican Party of Texas platform are most important in your opinion?
Are we talking about planks or priorities?
Which planks, plural, of the Republican Party of Texas platform are most important in your opinion?
All right, I don't remember the numbers, but the ones that involve election integrity, securing our borders, banning gender modification of children, stop sexualizing our children in Texas, defending our gun rights, and school choice is out there. So those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, I don't want to give my opponent a boost in the election, but she answered exactly what I wanted. I think we said the gender modification, school right, your patient, come on, speak right. Your school choice, immigration is a huge deal. We have got to stop the flow of drugs into this country. And basically also Second Amendment and just people's certain rights. Stop being so intrusive in people's lives. That's all.
Okay, question number 5, we're going to start with Michael. Given that a lot of Americans feel our country is losing its way, what do you think is the number one issue facing Republicans in Fayette County, and how would you work to address it?
The number one issue facing Republicans are citizens themselves. The elected officials or the citizens who are Republicans?
I'll reread the question. Given that a lot of Americans feel that our country is losing its way, what do you think is the number one issue facing Republicans in Fayette County, and how would you work to address it?
The number one issue is probably drugs. Well, actually, there's 2 issues. I'm sorry, I can't leave it to one. 2 issues that are biggest is immigration and drugs. Because you have so many people coming across, it's overburdening everything from the jails to the highways. People don't just look at people, but you got to look at the number of cars on road maintenance. Along with that, your drug trade is coming in. And I think if you notice more and more and more and more of our young people are getting addicted to drugs. What's the answers? I think stiffer penalties in the beginning. I think a lot of education is with it. But we have got to stop Washington from keeping these borders open, because that is our biggest threat right now.
I think a lot of us have lost faith in some of our representatives that we've elected. We've sent them to the State House with certain priorities that we just talked about the last question, and we're not seeing those priorities met, or even sometimes not even discussed, even though the Republican Party itself or our government, our governor has made those priorities supposedly, first to be addressed, then we're seeing them being ignored. So I think that concerns us as voters, that we elect these representatives, send them out to represent us, and then we feel like they have failed us because they haven't fulfilled our priorities.
Okay, question number 6, Deborah. Describe what grassroots means and how it applies to the structure of the Republican Party of Texas.
Again, as I addressed somewhat in my opening, grassroots means getting active in the party, going out and supporting your candidates, block walking, working at headquarters, volunteering to put out signs. Don't just complain about, oh, I don't see any signs. Well, come to the headquarters. I had Abbott signs left over. So they were free for the taking. All they had to do is show up at the headquarters. Also, as far as grassroots, I like to encourage candidates at the local level for our school boards, for our city councils. I want to see good conservatives in those positions, and hopefully they'll get the experience and the confidence to move up and run for higher offices.
Grassroots, simply put, is simple things like the late great Mr. Tommy Hudson did when he'd have sign drives at a Subway restaurant here to get the word out for the Republican presidential party at that time. Grassroots is little things like this, Lavaca County, where they have pulled pork plates to go and they organize people and get them together to work together to raise money for the Republican Party and to get the word out. To me, grassroots is more involving people. Simple things at the fair. You could have a food booth. You know, that way you can meet the candidates, get candidates working there, also raise money for the party, and you're donating back to your local fair. So it all works out. To me, that's what grassroots is getting young, old, everybody involved, to pull them together to work.
Okay, question number 7. We'll start with Michael. Name some of the legislative priorities adopted at the most recent Republican state convention and why legislative priorities matter.
The ones adopted, I know that they worked on immigration was a big one. I'm not the number one on that, stating it down the line. I know one of the deals, it was the immigration. Also, as I've said before, I think they worked a lot on the gender, how do you say it? Gender modification is what they call it. I'll call it weirdness, but that's what they were working on, and that's what needs to be more common sense roots, grassroots efforts, things us, normal people care about is what needs to be adopted more. And I think that that's what the Republican Party has been trying to bring in.
Okay, here are the 8 that were adopted in the 2022 state convention. Election integrity, secure the border, ban gender modification of children, stop sexualizing Texas kids, defend gun rights, pass school choice, ban Democrat chairs, and abolish abortion in Texas. And they're important, like I said earlier, because these are the issues that the grassroots voters want our legislators to focus on. These are the problems that we want them to try and fix. And again, if we elect our representatives and they go to go to Congress and don't fulfill what we feel is our Republican priorities, then there's where the disappointment comes in.
Question 8, we're going to start with Deborah. According to the Fayette County Executive Committee bylaws, what is the purpose of the Executive Committee?
The Executive Committee, I think I also mentioned in my opening, they have the power of the local party. All decisions that are made by the Executive Committee. I have 1 vote. We have 12 precincts. Right now I have 10 of those precinct chair positions filled. But precinct chairs make the decisions for the party as a whole.
Is to basically make the decisions for Fayette County. It's almost like a board of directors the way I look at it. I'm going to be an elected representative hopefully, but the executive committee is the one who makes decisions. It's always like I tell them in Ellinger, I'm so strong there that I don't even have a vote on the Chamber of Commerce. In this committee, you would have a vote, but that's where you bring everybody together to get everything worked out and where everybody kind of gets on the same page.
Okay, question 9, we're going to start with Michael. The term rhino, Republican in name only, is often bemoaned by many on social media and in casual conversations. Now that Fayette County will have 100% Republican representation, what will you do as a chair to promote true conservative Republican principles?
Promote those. I mean, what I can do as a chair is just promote what my values are and what I feel. But it's the voters who are going to have to bring that to whether. There are some rhinos out there that's everywhere. I've been a Republican since Ronald Reagan. I mean, I was a Reagan baby. And, but you can't do anything in the party, you've got to work with people and try to bring the good people in. But it's up to the voters on who gets elected.
I touched on this a couple of answers ago, I think, talking about encouraging grassroots activists and true conservatives to run for local offices like school boards and city councils, things like that. Put them in at the bottom, let them get their feet wet, get comfortable with being a public figure, and hopefully they will move up to higher positions, and we will build on that conservatism that's starting at the grassroots level.
Great, that concludes the prepared questions. We will walk through the audience to see if there's any audience questions. Okay, we got 3 questions from the audience, and we will start with Michael. First question is, what specifically do you plan to do to get out the vote, i.e. ballot harvesting and encouraging early voting?
Just getting the word out, getting more people aware of everything. Like I said, the one thing I feel we can do with this party is get a lot younger people introduced to it, because we all know how we're going to vote. I mean, to me personally, I feel when you're 40 years old, you basically know which way you're going to go. You're not going to influence one way or the other. It's the younger generation you got to tap and get it in the schools. Be sure and try to get everybody 18 registered and keep working from there. But get out there with the people, get your face known. Like I said, have little fundraisers, have the kids getting together, work on an organization so they want to come out and do things for the party.
Well, of course, encouraging early voting is important, and if you'll look at my little push cards I've got on the tables on the back, I have all of the hours and dates and times for early voting. Of course, all early voting is going to be at the election administrator's office, but then I also have the polling locations for March 5th. So putting out the information, I know it appears in the newspaper, but I feel like keeping these little push cards with you is just kind of a reminder of where it is. And I forgot the rest of the question.
What specifically do you plan to do to get out the vote, i.e. ballot harvesting and encourage early voting?
Okay. Well, things like this candidate forum. I feel that if voters have an opportunity to listen to their candidates, they're going to be more comfortable making a decision when it comes to marking their ballot. That's why we had the forum for the propositions last fall. We had,
Second audience question, Deborah. What are your thoughts on term limits?
I am in favor of term limits. I have very little hope that our current Congress would ever vote themselves term limits, because they're just in there for the most part for a payday and what they can get out of it. I know I'm talking about our federal government, and that's where it would have to start, really. So yes, I'm in favor. Do I have any hopes that it's going to happen anytime soon? Not so much.
100% for them. The longer somebody's in, the more power they wield, the more control they have. It's almost like a tenured professor or something. Once they're in there like that, you can't get rid of them. And that's where the rhino comes up so much, because they get so influenced by lobbyists and they're so influenced by the money that it don't stop. So I'm 100% for, I think 2 terms is more than enough for anybody.
And then last question from the audience. Michael, we're going to start with you. What are your thoughts on the use of paper ballots and hand counting to improve election integrity?
Paper ballots and hand counting? The machines do a good job, in my opinion. I mean, if you want to go through and hand count everything in the world, you can, but I think that with automation, as long as they're tested beforehand and proven to be factual, that's the way to go.
Well, first of all, Fayette County does have paper ballots. Whether you're talking about the optical scan ballots where the voter actually fills in the little bubbles next to the names, or the early voting that printed just because it's a countywide voting situation. All of those are documentation of the votes. They are held and protected. And like Michael said, I've attended the testing of the counting machines. There's several tests before each election. There's tests immediately before the counting starts. There's tests after it. And also, some people may not know this, but there's also a sample hand count. The Secretary of State tells each county which precincts that they have to go back and manually hand count. So there is a sampling of hand counting.
Okay, now we're going to move on to closing remarks. We'll start with Michael. You have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Okay, I'm gonna start off by apologizing. As soon as this is over with, I gotta go. Me and my lovely bride have to volunteer tonight in Ellinger at the community center, so we've gotta be there, have everything ready for them when they come in at 3. So I apologize for not sticking around. I would love to see this. I'm very good at what I do. I'm very good at working with people. I feel I can energize this party. I feel I can bring more young people into it. As I said, the older we get and the more people that move away, the more people you have come in, I can't even say the word now. You're gonna change the way it is. I mean, your people moving in do not have the same core values as you do that we in Fayette County have. I've been here from kindergarten through high school. I got out of here as soon as I could, and I could not wait to get back. And I think most of you know what I mean by that. So my wife and I own several properties in Ellinger. We have a little bed and breakfast, my business there. We're not going nowhere. Everything I do for this county is for the future of it. So please vote for me, and I promise you, you will see a lot of fun coming.
All right. The chairman position, if conducted responsibly, is a full-time job. It's a volunteer job, which requires daily, year-round commitment. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. Since I became chair, we have established a Facebook page, a YouTube site, and an outstanding website. We host quarterly meetings with excellent speakers on current topics. We began hosting candidate forums with the first primary I managed. We open a candidate headquarters during presidential election years to distribute candidate materials and, yes, candidate signs. We are fiscally conservative, able to cover our necessary expenses with free will and in-kind donations. Prior to 2014, when I became vice chair, Fayette County had only one Republican in elected county offices. After this primary, Republicans will hold all 19 positions. I recognize the desire to engage the youth. In fact, I have hired student election clerks in the past several election cycles. We also have youth participation in our annual parade entries throughout the county, at our booth at the 4-day Fayette County Fair, and at these forums. I appreciate the parents who encourage their children to participate in political activities. I also know that there are many other activities that take priority, such as school, sports, church, and family. Elections are the key to our freedoms. I will continue to take my chairman responsibilities seriously. I am proud that the executive committee and voters have put their trust in me over the past 7 years, and I invite you to join us and work with us to preserve conservative values and election integrity in Fayette County. I ask for your continued support and your vote in the March 5th primary.
Thank you. Next up is County District Attorney candidates. James Herbert and Mark Elbit, please. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to read the forum rules one more time. Y'all have 3 minutes for opening remarks, starting in ballot order with James.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is James Herbrick. I am the Assistant County Attorney here in Fayette County. I've been your Assistant County Attorney for 19 years. As the Assistant, you guys have invested in me and trusted in me to handle your cases. I've handled both felony and misdemeanor cases. I've handled protective orders, CPS cases, traffic court cases. I've advised law enforcement in all aspects of criminal prosecution. I've handled over 20 felony trials to a jury. I've handled many more trials to the bench. We have received many life sentences here, trying cases in Fayette County. I tried felony cases in Victoria County and the one felony case in Lee County. I've had a lot of experience handling and doing the job of the county attorney's office. I'm here with my wife, Shannon Herbrick. Together we have 5 children. I am a Republican, I am a Christian, and I am a conservative. I ask you for your vote because I believe I am the most experienced candidate for this job. Thank you.
Good afternoon. You all know by now that this is my home, and I've been quite active in Fayette County. In consideration of time, I want to focus my remarks. The first issue is crime and information. There is zero information on the Fayette County website about the county attorney's office and no information about crime. I will change that because the citizens have the right to know. The incumbent did say in the paper that the felony caseload has more than tripled since she took office in 2005. So I've gone to the district clerk's office to see what statistics they have. The current reporting period in their records for felonies starts September 1st, 2010, and I looked through December 31st, 2023, 13 years. In those 13 years, the records show only 20 felony cases have been tried to verdict, and some of those were tried by the state attorney general's office. The report also shows that during this same period, in 1,085 cases, felony cases, the defendant received deferred adjudication. Deferred adjudication means a plea bargain is reached. There is no trial, no adjudication of guilt, that's what's being deferred, and no jail time. This would include the Rafael Ramiro case I've addressed before. By comparison, I looked at Colorado County, Columbus. The same report filed by the district clerk in that county during the same 13-year period shows 111 cases tried to verdict, and only 803 defendants received deferred adjudication. I think those statistics need to be more in line in Fayette County. Staffing and of the office. In the first forum, my opponent said two things. One is that he does not believe he's the best candidate, he believes the incumbent is, but she's not running. But then he said, quote, and I believe my boss is going to be willing to stick around and work for me, close quote. That would mean no change in the people in the office. The incumbent withdrew from the Democratic primary after I filed in the Republican primary. By calling her the best candidate and having plans for her to stay in the office, they are merely shuffling the deck with the same cards. But more importantly, they are avoiding having her to face a contested election as a Democratic candidate, yet still remain active in the office. I think people can see that for what it is. The issue of experience. I am a lifelong Republican, and I have 40 years of legal experience, including 22 years of trial work and leading a law department at the company I worked at. So I'm told by officials that Mr. Herbert handles misdemeanors and non-felonies. I'm not ready for his job. Thank you.
James, first question is, explain how your personal background, education, and work experience make you the best candidate for county attorney.
My undergraduate degree was in nursing, which actually comes up quite a bit in the job that we do. I then went to law school. I've been practicing criminal law. I've been practicing in the county attorney's office for 21 years. I've tried to a jury 20 cases, but the majority of cases are not tried to a jury. I've had over 70 trials on protective orders. I've had over 100 trials on CPS cases. I don't even know how many trials I've had on criminal cases, but they've been a lot. I'm the only one who has actually done this area of the law, and I like to compare it to being a doctor. When you're a heart surgeon and you've done heart surgeries for 30 years and someone needs a brain surgeon, are you going to ask the guy that's done heart surgeries for 30 years, or are you going to ask the proctologist? Who are you going to ask to do your heart surgery? Who are you going to ask to do your brain surgery? You're going to ask someone that's practiced in those fields. And this is very much like that. Criminal law is very different than civil law. The rules that apply, the rules of evidence that apply, the statutes that apply, it's a lot of law, it's a lot of statutes, it's a lot of case law, it's a lot of criminal statutes covering about 10 different volumes of books. Very different than civil law. Thank you.
I think my lifelong experience in working with people, being hardworking, diligent, honest, and the broad experiences I've had over those 40 years in my career make me the best candidate in this race. I can learn, and I have learned, a lot of different areas of law. When I worked for Core Laboratories, I didn't know any of those things, but I rose to become general counsel, where I served for 13 years, successfully. When I was in private law firms and doing trial work, I was elected to be the partner in charge of the Houston office of a 300-member, 300-attorney firm. I have succeeded in everything I've done in my career, and I think that's what qualifies me. I can learn anything, and I've proven that. But I think I have the broad experience that is needed. I think I'm fair and impartial to people, and honest and hardworking. And those are the traits that I would use to succeed in this job and handle it well, and to make the citizens of Fayette County proud to have me as their county attorney.
Question number 2, we're going to start with Mark. What is your motivation to run for this position, and how many years do you expect to serve?
Okay, well, my motivation to run is that I like to serve wherever I am. I've been out here in Fayette County and have been involved with a number of organizations as a volunteer on boards of different organizations. I have now teaching school as a substitute teacher. I just like to be involved and to help people, and I enjoy working with the kids, trying to be a role model for people of how to act. So my motivation to run for this office was because it was available. And I think the voters needed a choice. They haven't had a choice for this office in over 50 years, the best I can determine. And I think they needed a choice, and as opposed to being told who their county attorney is again and again and again. So that's my motivation. How many years do I plan to remain in this office? Well, I'm going to take it 4 years at a time. I have no idea. I mean, I can't sit here and say I pledged to 12, 16 years or whatever. But I plan to do these first 4 years, and then you all are going to judge, if I run again, whether I deserve a second term. It's up to you, not to me.
I've always wanted to be involved with law enforcement. I've always wanted to be a servant. In high school, I was a volunteer EMT for Fayette County EMS. Several of the paramedics on the ambulance were police officers. I got involved and excited about prosecution and visiting with those guys. I did several ride-alongs when I was a youth here. Going to law school, it's what interested me. So I did a clerkship at the First Court of Appeals. I also did a criminal clerkship while I was in law school. And it's what really excited me. It's what I've devoted my career to. It's my passion. And I think that shows. I've been very involved here at the county attorney's office. We work 40 hours a week plus. I'm on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Have been for the last 19 years. This is what I do for a living, and this is what my passion is. As far as how long I plan on doing it, as long as I feel comfortable in doing this job. I'm in the middle of my career. Like I said, I've done this for 21 years. I see a long career ahead of me.
Question number 3, we're going to start with James. Describe your trial experience with number and types of cases, including appellate cases, if any.
That's going to take a little while. I've tried many sexual assault cases, continuous sexual assault cases, cases where children were victims, a few cases where the adults were the victim. In Victoria, I started out, I had 2 felony trials in juvenile court. One was a sexual assault of a child case. The other case was an aggravated assault on a public servant that happened within the TYC unit that they had down there. The other case was a felony DWI case. On the misdemeanor side, I had 6 DWI trials. I had 1 theft by check trial. Coming to Fayette County, the first trial I had was Wardell Moore. He received a 75-year sentence. And that was an aggravated assault with a weapon case. I first chaired a murder trial here. The last case I tried was in Lee County. It was a theft of cattle. The defendant received a 50-year sentence. I've had I had 20 felony trials. I've had probably 12 misdemeanor trials. I've had 2 CPS trials that went to a jury. One was in Victoria, one was here. Again, I had 70 protective order trials, all to the bench. I've had over 70 CPS trials to the bench, and numerous other criminal trials to the bench, and mainly sexual assault cases. I did participate in several murder trials as well. Preparing for those, But the biggest one was Dylan Nelson, where I first chaired that murder trial. And as far as appellate work, I've been in front of the 13th Court of Appeals on the stop got me.
Well, let me start by saying what gets lost in the translation is all this work on corporate matters. For the first 22 years of my career, I did trial work and appellate work. I started at the city attorney's office in Houston, coming out of UT Law School, and I was there a little over 2 years. And in those 2 years, I probably tried 20 to 30 cases, first chair. I mean, some of them, you know, the boss hands you a file at 10:30 and says, you're picking a jury at 1:30. You've never seen the file, you don't know any of the facts. You got to figure out and think on your feet during those cases. But I've also then, with law firms, represented businesses that were being sued to go out of existence. You might have heard about that in the news here locally, federally. But, you know, there's a lot of pressure with that. The other thing I've done is I've handled appeals. I've handled appeals on the state level, and I was out of law school 6 months when I handled an appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans. 3-judge panel. I then argued the case en banc. 15 judges handled that. We lost 8-7. It was the constitutionality of an ordinance. And then I wrote the brief to get it heard by the Supreme Court, which accepted the case, but my boss stepped in and said, I'll take this one. So he went to Washington, not me. But I've handled 22 years, I'd say 40 to 60 cases, first chair to try from jury selection to verdict.
Question number 4, we'll start with Mark. What are your thoughts about the current condition of our county jail and what should be done about it? As an example, leave as is, remodel, rebuild, etc.
Okay, well, I have talked to an official about the county jail and did so early in this campaign. I understand that there was a study conducted by the former county judge, or maybe the commissioner's court, that we're going to run out of room in this jail by 2028, I believe. And it takes 4 or 5 years to build a jail. My answer simply is we need enough room to house convicted criminals. And whether we do that by building a new jail, whether we remodel this one, whether we farm them out to other counties and house them elsewhere, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I haven't studied the economics of it. But I do want to make sure there is room for convicted criminals to be housed and put away in jail or prison or wherever they need to be.
Well, remodeling would be out of the question because it would actually be more expensive than building a new jail. When you remodel a jail like ours, you have to come up to current standards, which means you'd have to tear everything out and start over. We are running out of room. We're currently housing 5 inmates in Lee County. We are going to need to build a new jail. We are going to have to bite that bullet at some point in the near future. We're closer to building a new jail than we're not. I'd like to also expand on my last question a little bit. I didn't get to finish talking about it. In addition to all the trial experience I talked about, I've tried hundreds of cases to a jury, to final verdict in traffic court, the same level that Mr. Elvig was talking about. I've also handled hundreds of bench trials in traffic court. As far as appellate matters, I've been the appellate department of our attorney's office. I've been to the Third Court of Appeals. I've had my case taken to the Supreme Court of Texas. So I've had quite a bit of appellate experience as well. Thank you.
All right, the 5th question, we're going to start with James. It has been alleged that the county attorney's office is soft on crime. What is your response to that?
Definitely not. We've received multiple verdicts of life sentences, 50 years, 35 years, 25 years, 75 years. There's been some discussion about these deferred adjudications. Let me tell you, deferred adjudication does not mean no jail time. That is false. A lot of the people that were placed on deferred adjudications received jail time as part of their plea. The really great thing about a deferred adjudication is it leaves the whole punishment range open for the offense, where if you give a straight probation, you can only probate 10 years of a sentence. There are many people that are giving deferred adjudications because if they mess up, they're still looking at life. And we've revoked people's sentences and sentenced them to life. We've also put them on probation many times and sentenced them to drug treatment. They remained in the Fayette County Jail until a bed was available. Some of that drug treatment was at a SAFE-B, a substance abuse felony punishment facility. For felonies that are 3rd degree or higher, that is a 180-day program. For state jail felonies, that's a 90-day program. That program is in the penitentiary. So many of these deferred adjudications that he's talking about, they actually receive significant jail time. That SafeP program, when you get out, you go to a halfway house for another 6 months. That's an inpatient treatment. And so that's a whole year you're away from Fayette County. And then after that halfway house, you still see a counselor for another 6 months.
I believe it is in my discussions with the officials of the county. Again, I'm not attacking my opponent. I don't think it's his responsibility to set the tone or the agenda for this county attorney's office. That's the county attorney's job. So I'm not blaming him for any of the statistics that I've just read or any soft on crime. That decision is made by somebody else. If I'm elected, it will rest with me. But in talking to officials, what they tell me is, because I asked them, I said, are these statistics right? Am I reading this right, that there's been only 20 trials in the last 13 years and these deferred adjudication cases? Yep, that's right. With the comment, yeah, they plead everything out. I'm just going by what I'm told. That's all I have, because there is no information published. So I think it is soft. I'd like to be harder on crime and criminals, because I want the reputation to be that I better not commit a crime in Fayette County, because I am facing some severe consequences if I do. And I don't want crime to happen anywhere, but I sure don't want to happen here, and jeopardize the safety of our citizens. So I will set a new tone that I think will get out to the criminals.
Question number 6. Start with Mark. Regarding restrictions specifically on gatherings and business closures forced upon us by the state during the COVID crisis, what was the constitutional basis for these mandates, and do you support them?
Well, this question came up, as I recall, in the first forum, and I think I said, no, I don't support them, and left it at that. But, I haven't studied the constitutional basis for the mandates. I think they went too far, but fortunately we were in Texas, and Texas was a lot less restrictive than other states. In fact, there are still states that are a heck of a lot more restrictive 4 years later. So I can't answer the question as to the constitutional basis and give you a treatise on that, but I was not in favor of the mask mandates and the what I think was overly burdensome restrictions on public gatherings and that sort of thing.
I don't believe there was a constitutional basis for the mandates. We did not support them. We did not issue any tickets for failing to wear masks. We did not enforce any mask mandates. We advised law enforcement not to enforce mask mandates. We believed it was unconstitutional from the beginning.
Question number 7. James, in your opinion, what are the consequences of the massive influx of illegal aliens into Texas posed to Fayette County, and how do you think it affects the workload of the county attorney's office?
It's very much increased our workload. We have a lot of arrests that have happened on I-10, on 77, on 290, on Old 90. These drugs are flowing through our county. They're not stopping here. We also have a lot of drugs that do make it here. But we're seeing a lot of drugs that are being hauled through our county, and it's because those borders are wide open. 10 years ago, the drugs were made locally, which was very dangerous, but we don't see any local labs anymore. We're not knocking down any methamphetamine labs in the county anywhere because they've been made so cheap in Mexico and in China. All of our methamphetamines that we have in this country come out of Mexico. All our fentanyl comes out of China. Some of our meth comes from China, but does funnel through Mexico. All of the drugs you're seeing, they're coming from other countries. They're not being made here locally anymore. It's much cheaper for the cartel to make them in Mexico and in China. It's much safer for them to make it down there because there's no enforcement down there. And it free flows across our border.
Well, it's pretty hard not to agree with what James said. Our country's been invaded from Mexico, from China, from other countries, but across the southern border, which is wide open, despite protestations by the current administration that it isn't. And I think that has terribly affected the safety of Fayette County citizens and all throughout the state and all throughout the country. So I agree, it's a problem. But how do we deal with it? And I keep coming back to this Romero case. He was an undocumented or a migrant who'd overstayed his visa and was received deferred adjudication and was out. There was no jail time in his case. That's what it says in the order. And he was placed on 5 years adjudication. I want to take a look at migrants who come in and commit crimes. I think they deserve heightened sense of scrutiny, and to address that and to make us as safe as we can be, given the invasion of our country that's being allowed to happen.
Mark, question number 8. Given that federal agencies like the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives are publishing unconstitutional rules banning things such as forced reset triggers and pistol braces, and given that many law-abiding Fayette County citizens could be deemed felons overnight, how would you approach cases involving violations of such rules, and what would you recommend be done to protect our citizens?
Well, as a lifelong Republican, I'm a very strong Second Amendment believer. I'll just say that generally. But my job as a county attorney, because I can't sit here and prejudge a case 6 months, a year, 2 years from now that may come up. I have no idea the facts and the law that will apply to that case. My job as a county attorney and as an attorney is to look at the facts, look at the law, and then make the best informed decision and impartial decision I can to address whatever the crime is or whatever the alleged activity is. But I will start with the basis that I'm a very strong believer in the Second Amendment, and that will affect my view on things, because I don't want those rights taken away or diminished for the citizens of this country.
Well, first of all, those are federal crimes, so we actually have no role in enforcing those crimes. We're not allowed to arrest or prosecute federal crime. So our role is not to do anything with those because it doesn't affect us. As a Second Amendment advocate, our role is to vote and to put the right people in place that put those things aside and pass proper legislation. But we're not involved in prosecuting or arresting people for violations of federal law. If it does not come across our desk, there's nothing for us to look at. We recently had an individual where the federal government came down to seize his reset trigger. He asked the sheriff's office to be present for his safety. And so our sheriff's office did do that, but they were not there to enforce federal law. They were only there at the request of that resident. We do not enforce federal law.
Question number 9, starting with James. Can you describe the situation where a law may be unconstitutional and the challenge it presents with respect to enforcement?
Well, with the mask mandate, the challenge was just getting the word out to law enforcement that we don't want you arresting anybody, we don't want you writing any tickets, it's unconstitutional. And the challenge is just getting that word out there fast and making them understand what the law is, which we did. We got out really quick, we called all of the supervisors. We had discussions very early on, the first few weeks of that, and nobody, again, was written a ticket. There's other laws that have been declared unconstitutional that have been enforced for a long time, but they were declared unconstitutional for weird reasons, like they were unconstitutionally vague. And sometimes when you read a statute, you don't believe it's vague, but the courts believe it's vague. So you're not always will you be on top of it, and sometimes it's just getting the word out once something is declared unconstitutional. Hey, we can't do this anymore. So we have classes when that stuff comes up. We educate our officers when that comes up, and so does the state. They send out bulletins on that.
Well, let me go back to one of the very first cases I handled was defending the constitutionality of a city ordinance that sought to protect police officers during the course of their duties. It made it illegal to interfere, harass, I forget what the rest of the verbs were, but I defended the constitutionality of that city ordinance. That is a case that went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. We lost 2-1. I was 25 years old arguing that case. And then 6 months later, I was back before the full 15 judges, which is an intimidating sight, I can tell you. And we lost 8-7, and then my boss lost 8-1 in the street court, so I did better than he did. But, obviously we couldn't enforce that law after that was determined to be unconstitutional. It would be the same thing for any law that's determined to be unconstitutional. You can't enforce it. I hope that answers the question.
Mark, question number 10. What are your thoughts on the county attorney's office budget? What changes, if any, would you recommend? And how would you use SB 22 funds?
Well, I've had to dig around to find the budget. My understanding is the Fayette County budget's about $30 million, $31 million, something like that. The county attorney's budget is, best I can tell, $695,000. At least that's what's in the page on county attorney. You know, I'm gonna fight for every penny I can to get resources to be able to combat crime, which I think is kind of the primary responsibility of the county attorney, acting as either the county attorney or a district attorney. But I'm gonna fight for resources to make sure we have the proper staff, because I don't plan to do this alone. I plan to staff it with the best people, whoever they are. And I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna fight for those resources. And the last part of your question was, how am I gonna use, is that asset forfeiture funds? I don't know the law. I don't remember the last part of your question.
How would you use SB 22 funds?
Well, you know, I need to study SB 22, and I will. Just like I've done everything else in my career. If I don't know it, I'll find out about it, and I'll figure out an answer on how to use those funds.
Well, currently our budget is the $695,000, but part of that budget is not spent. Some of it is for another attorney position that has not been filled, and another position is a victims assistance coordinator position that has not been filled. So of that $695,000, not all of that is actually utilized currently by our office. Senate Bill 22 is an amazing thing. It just came out. It's to help small counties, small prosecutors' offices and small sheriff's offices. It's quite a bit of funding, so I don't see that we'll be asking any more funding from the court anytime soon, as long as that funding is there. That funding will help us. Mainly it's to hire new prosecutors, hire prosecutors with experience. And so that will help us fill that other position. We haven't been able to fill the position just because the salary has been so low. So we'd be utilizing those funds to pay prosecutors so that we have well-trained, seasoned prosecutors.
James, question 11. What continuing legal education have you taken in the last 4 years?
Well, we're required to take, as part of our license, 15 hours of continuing legal education. All of the legal education I've taken has either been from TDCAA or from the Texas Municipal Court System. I usually take more than the 15 hours that are mandated. There's other legal education that I take that I don't get credit for, but it's by organizations that want to help prosecutors handle certain cases. And so we go to a lot of training that we don't get continuing legal education for, even though it's legal education. It's just not approved by the state. So we get training on how to deal with victims of sexual assault, how to deal with child victims, those sort of things. But all of the training and all the classes I've taken are for prosecutors, not for civil attorneys.
Perfect timing. I just completed 15 and a half hours of continuing legal education on criminal law. And reported that to the state bar, so I met my annual requirement. But I thought, you know, let's not take it on some topic I already know something about. Let's take it on criminal law. So they covered all kinds of topics in 15 plus hours of that. Prior to that, when I moved out here full-time in July 2021, I started practicing local law, guardianships, ad litem appointments, wills, deeds. So I took the continuing education course on guardianships so I could do my first guardianship, which I had never done before, but I think handled it very well. And I would do the same thing in this job as I've been able to do in that role, in my other roles in my career. And I will take the education, I will learn, I will read about it, and do all that, and I will be a good county attorney.
Mark, we're going to start with you for question 12.
Okay.
What programs and policies would you implement as county attorney to reduce crime and increase public safety in the county?
Well, first thing I would do, and this was my first point, is I would improve the communication with the citizens of Fayette County. Right now, if you go on the Fayette County website, you see a link for the district judge, the district clerk, the county tax assessor, the auditor. There is no link for the county attorney's office. So I would immediately put one up, and I would start educating the citizens of Fayette County about what our office does, criminal statistics and successes we have. Again, not revealing confidential information, but just telling the citizens, this is what we're doing and how we're accomplishing it. I think you deserve that. So I would improve that starting immediately. Then I would also take a harder line on criminals. And, you know, I'm not going to say deferred adjudication is not appropriate ever, or a plea bargain is not appropriate ever, but I would take a harder line so that the criminals understand that they're facing jail time if they commit crimes, certainly felonies in Fayette County, because I want that word out to the criminals, and I want them to have us to have that reputation.
So we've done a lot of programs over the years. We educate law enforcement. We have legislative update classes. We have report writing classes, those sort of things. As far as to reduce crime, we've offered all the schools in Fayette County to put devices in the schools that would detect the odor of marijuana or cigarettes in the bathrooms. And so to prevent crime, you got to start early on. And so if you can catch children using drugs early on, you can prevent them from becoming addicts. So it's one of the programs that we spend over $60,000 of asset forfeiture funds to help the schools detect when kids are using drugs. We also requested and were part of getting school resource officers in our schools. So before the state even mandated it, Flatonia, Schulenburg, and LaGrange all had school resource officers, and we were very involved in that program and educating those officers. There's a lot of rules that apply to SROs, so we're involved in that process. We've met with the schools over the years. I meet with the LaGrange school on a regular basis because I volunteered to be their truancy officer. So part of it is just being involved early on in those kids' lives so that you don't have criminals later in life. Educating our law enforcement officers, keeping them abreast of the changes in the law, what we can do with the law. We have these daily conversations with officers about their offense reports, what we're needing to see, what else we could see. We're requesting additional evidence from them. So education is the biggest thing.
James, question 13. Describe the challenge that increased felony caseload presents to the county attorney's office, and what can be done to help improve the efficient disposition of these cases.
Well, again, our disposition rate is actually really good. We looked at that on the numbers, and we're better than we've ever been on our disposition rate. We're handling 500 to 500 felonies a year. We're handling about 800 cases a year. So 1,000 cases of deferred adjudication over the last 20 years is actually a small percentage of everything we do. We send the people to the penitentiary on a regular basis. I think we sent 4 people to the penitentiary last week, Wednesday. People go to the penitentiary on a regular basis in this county. The criminals know this is not the county to break the law. We often have to go to Bastrop County to buy drugs off of criminals because they won't cross that county line. We have set a very good example of what it is to be strong with criminals here in Fayette County. Thank you.
Well, with all due respect to my opponent, it's hard to know the information because it's not published anywhere. And that's the first thing is the citizen. I'm running for office, so I'm looking it up. The average citizen doesn't know what question to ask or where to go to look for it. So I don't know if the cases are being dealt with efficiently or how the caseload is being resolved. But one thing I did do was a couple weeks ago, I requested the Sheriff's Department the statistics of all felony arrests in Fayette County from 2005 to 2023 by year. I received a response from the county attorney's office 3 days ago that says our county software, and they named it, doesn't track felonies and misdemeanors separately. Therefore, you can't. There's no information to give you. Well, how are we supposed to, as citizens, know how to deal with the felonies and the cases if we don't know the information about how many felonies there are? All I can go by is what the district clerk's office produced to me, because there's no information on the website. So I think we need to do a better job of dealing with crime and educating the public.
Question 14, to start with Mark. In order for citizens to gauge your effectiveness, what results would we look to in order to assess your performance?
Well, one thing is the level of communication you get out of my office. Number 2 is with the information that I publish about our efforts, all the things that we do in the county attorney's office, including fighting crime, is for have you look at those statistics and those results and determine, as the educated citizens, whether I'm doing a good job or not, and whether I'm doing a better job than the current incumbent is doing. So I think that that would be a gauge, is the level of education, the level of communication, and the other thing is, if you get the sense that I will be fair and impartial, I'm not going to favor the powerful or disadvantage the not powerful. If I'm doing a good job along those lines, being a lawyer, looking at the facts, the law, applying it as evenly as I can humanly possible, that's the job I want to be gauged on. So those are the things: communication, better crime statistics, and a perception that I'm being fair.
Well, we live in a small community. Our reputations precede us. When we try a case, it's published very well in the papers. It's on the radio. When the arrest's made, it's on the radio. The sheriff gives a sheriff's report. The chief of police in LaGrange gives a police report. The chief of police in Schulenburg, they all publish reports of their arrest. This is a small community. This community knows what we've done. If we had a bad reputation, people would be at our door, banging our door, complaining about the work that we do. We constantly receive compliments. Everyone in this community hears and talks to other people in this community. They know what we're doing. We are not hiding things behind the 8 ball. We have an open door policy. I meet with people in the public on a weekly basis. People show up all the time. We have discussions. But we are communicating. Just because it's not on a website does not mean we're not communicating with the public.
Last question, James, we'll start with you. How do you feel your qualifications as an attorney will benefit the county?
Again, 21 years of on-the-job training. There is no substitute for on-the-job training. I don't care what profession you go to, everybody understands that. This is a very small area of law when you look at all of the law that's out there, but it's a niche practice. It involves several codes, a lot of case law, a lot of experience that I have, a lot of training that I have. I've been to a lot of conferences. I've been to a lot of meetings. I watch stuff on the internet that's sent to me by our advocacy agencies. I'm involved with a lot of different things that educate me on how to do this job, and I've done this job for 21 years. I've been asked to prosecute cases in 4 other counties, neighboring counties, because my reputation precedes me. I've handled over 20 cases in the 4 counties that surround us. Thank you.
I have a great deal of confidence in my abilities as an attorney and as a human being to be impartial, fair, diligent, hardworking, and all of those factors. But as an attorney, I graduated from UT Law School in 1984. So I've been a lawyer for 40 years. And in those 40 years, I have seen a lot. But more importantly, I've succeeded at the different jobs in different areas that I've had, from partner in charge to general counsel of a $8 billion, 5,000 employee company that operated internationally. You get to deal with different experiences, but most importantly, you have to be responsive to whatever requirements are of the job. And I've been responsive, and I've been timely, accurate, and done a good job and succeeded. That's my qualification for this. It's a special area of the law, but it's something I can learn. I've learned a lot of special areas of the law. But again, I want you to have confidence that you're getting somebody who's honest, diligent, and hardworking, and that's what I will apply to this job.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to open it up to audience questions. First question, I'm going to start with James. How long have you lived in this county?
I'm a 4th generation native of Fayette County. I've lived here all my life, except for when I went to law school and a 2-year stint in Victoria.
I have lived in this county full-time 2.5 years since I retired. I've owned my place in West Point since 2008, so 16 years. My parents, who are here, have owned their place in Round Top since October 1977. But my time predates all that. I remember Mayor's Dairy Mart on Travis Street, coming through LaGrange on the way to Austin. But I've lived here 2.5 years full-time.
Mark, with limited county resources available to conduct felony prosecutions to jury trial, what are your priorities in obtaining felony convictions through plea bargaining, and which defendants receive probation in lieu of jail time?
Well, I'm all in favor of guilty pleas. If they want to enter a guilty plea, and then we assess the appropriate punishment. But I don't know which defendants are going to get probation. That's going to depend on a case-by-case basis in looking at what's in front of you. It's not fair for a lawyer to say, I'm going to do X on a case that hasn't even come up yet. So I will assess it when a case comes in front of me as to who gets probation, or how I recommend it. It involves the judge as well. But that's about the best I can answer in terms of how I would approach a case.
Well, in general, if it's a violent crime, if it's a sex crime, we're looking for penitentiary time. The exceptions are based on the facts of the cases, the strengths of the cases, and those sort of things. People have criminal histories. We're making jail time offers too if they have lengthy criminal histories. First-time offenders, young children, these are the ones that are receiving the deferred adjudications. There's some offenses that probation is prohibited by statute. There's some offenses that are mandatory probation. So you have to look at what the offenses are, and you have to look at the law first before you make those recommendations on things that aren't violent criminals. On 3G offenses, your murder, your aggravated assault, your aggravated sexual assault, I won't go through the whole list, you cannot get court-ordered probation. So you have to look at the statutes, and you have to be aware of what you can and cannot do. You have to look at the facts, how strong the cases are to know what you can and cannot do. Those that we take to trial are those that we cannot reach agreements on, and sometimes it's because we offer life.
Okay, the third question from the audience, we'll start with James. Aside from crime, which is important, what do you see as the role of the county attorney in advising the county entities on contracts and disposition of public funds?
Well, the assistant in the office does the majority of that with the county attorney's supervision. I have not been the county attorney, but as the county attorney, you're over all of that. You're looking at what your two assistants are doing. You're also involved in those conversations. I've been involved at limited times in those conversations, but as county attorney, you oversee all of those conversations as well. We do advise Commissioners Court. I do have commissioners that call me on the weekends because I'm available, and so at those times I've advised Commissioners Court. I've also advised Commissioners Court when the assistant's been on vacation or out of pocket. So I'm involved in those conversations maybe 10% of the time, but I will be involved in those conversations 100% of the time if I'm the county attorney.
Okay. I have firsthand experience with this in this county. I made Commissioners Court on December 22nd, 2022, passed 4 amendments to the personnel policy of Fayette County. It's in the minutes. So I had said exempt employees, which are non-elected, salaried county employees who are running for office, must track their time. That's what the minutes said. So I made a request for that for my opponent's time records. I was told in the meeting, in a letter from this assistant, not him, but the other assistant, that, well, the language was never finalized, we never got around to passing it back to the commissioner, so it's not in effect, so you don't get the information. So I've been to Commissioners Court. They've rescinded that rule since then. So it is very important for an assistant county attorney to timely advise and put into effect things that are passed by Commissioners Court and to timely advise the other agencies.
Last audience question, start with Mark. What existing ordinances need amending or creating?
Well, folks, I'm just going to be honest with you. I haven't studied the ordinances that need to be amended, and I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that topic, along with all other responsibilities I would have as your county attorney, would get a thorough look and assessment as to what role we can play in that, and what amendments need to be made, what needs to be changed, that sort of thing. All I can do is promise to be open and work diligently on your behalf on topics like that. among all the other responsibilities I would have as county attorney?
Well, first of all, there aren't many ordinances that the legislature has allowed or authorized the county government to pass. Most laws are passed by the legislature. The only ordinances that we're allowed to pass are those that the legislature specifically authorizes us to do. I do believe in talking with Mr. Burnson that our subdivision regs need to be looked at some more. We have been looking at those subdivision regs for some time. There's some amendments, there's some additions, there's some things that need to be changed within those subdivision regs. But those policy decisions are made by Commissioner's Court. As far as any other ordinances, one that I talked about with my boss here just a few months ago was sexually oriented businesses. We are authorized to pass the sexually oriented business ordinances, and we never have. Many counties have. I reached out to Jay Johannes. He sent me some paperwork and documentation of what they've done. And so that was one recommendation that I had, that we pass something, because we never know what the future has in store for our county. But for the majority, they're just...
All right, we've reached the time for closing remarks. We've got 2 minutes for closing remarks, and we will start in valid order. James, you're first.
Thank you again for everybody coming out. I think my experience speaks for itself. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. But I have 21 years of on-the-job training. My passion is what I do. I've been here. I've been available for you guys. I've prosecuted. I've worked hard. I've worked diligently. My reputation of integrity is there. I'm honest with the people. I'm honest with the court personnel. I am the last safeguard when we do a plea bargain. There's been many a times where I've looked at a plea bargain and said, this isn't right. There's been many a times where I've heard defense counsel talk to me, and I've had to advise them, hey, you need to let your client know this is a consequence of the plea. That's the reason why I've garnered the support of the defense bar. That's the reason I've garnered the support of so many judges, so many law enforcement officers. I've been endorsed by so many people because of my reputation. And if you don't know me, please talk to law enforcement. Please talk to the district clerk personnel, the county clerk personnel. Please talk to your local elected officials. I do believe when you talk to those people, you will understand why they are endorsing me, why they are supporting me, and why they are asking that I be elected as your next county attorney.
Well, I would also like to thank everyone who's here today and who's attended either of the other two forums, and those people who've listened online to this thing. I am running primarily to give the citizens of Fayette County a choice. Again, a choice you haven't had. And let me tell you, I have loved this process because getting out and talking to people has been a wonderful experience. There are a lot of people who want change. And that's what keeps me going, is talking to those people. Now, we talk about endorsements. I don't think a single official who's endorsed my opponent has spoken to me before they endorsed it. So it's not like they're comparing apples to apples. They just have chosen to endorse him. But I want to assure everyone who supports me or supports my opponent and votes for us that I am not a threat to anyone. I will treat people impartially, fairly, and that's all I can do. As a lawyer, as a person of integrity, is I'm not out to settle the score with anybody because they didn't support me. Everybody gets a fair shot in the county attorney's office if I'm there. And that's what I want to do. So remember, you have a choice. When you enter that voting booth, that is your private sanctuary. Nobody can tell you what to do or judge what you do. They aren't going to know. I want people to think about how the office has been, what I'm promising to do in the office, and how I'm promising to represent you all, and make that decision of your own conscience. So please vote on March 4th for me. I would appreciate that. Or if you early vote, please vote for me.
Thank you, candidates. All right, everyone, we're going to start with the House District 85 candidate questions. We're going to open it up to the 3 minutes of opening remarks, and we're going to start with Tim.
Howdy, thank y'all for coming out today. It's great to be back in Fayette County. My name is Tim Greason. I grew up in Richmond, just down the road, and I've lived in Sealy since 2008. I'm married to my awesome wife. I have two children, 4 and 7. I'm a member of the Dodo Club, dads of daughters only. So it's a drinking club, I'm just kidding. But they're fantastic. I love them, and they are why I do almost everything. I'm a Christian. I've helped lead worship in my church for a really long time. In my day job, I'm an engineer and a naval architect. I graduated from the best university in the world, Texas A&M. Yep, and I started off as a structural engineer in oil and gas. Then I moved over to naval architecture, which is what I do today, where I design tugboats, barges, yachts, and historical vessels. I work on the Alyssa, I work on the LST-325, and also I work on the Battleship Texas quite a bit as well. I'm running because I feel like we're losing Texas, that despite the number of Republicans we send to Austin, we keep getting a leftist agenda out of Austin. Dave Phelan has got to go. We cannot have him as speaker anymore. The World Economic Forum and the federal government are trying to come into our state and take over. You have Soros-funded DAs all over the place. We need an attorney general who's going to stand up to those guys, and we have that in Ken Paxton. I'm very upset that Ken Paxton was impeached. He should never have been impeached, and we've got to have better representation in Austin who understands what's actually happening in the world today.
Thank you very much. I am Stan Kitzman, and I'm your current state representative. This is we're in the middle of my first term, so we just finished the first session along with the special sessions that we went through. I'm proud to represent Fayette County. When I learned that Waller County would be reunited with Fayette County and Austin County, along with Colorado and Wharton and part of Fort Bend, to form the new House District 85, it brought me back to where I grew up. I spent time here in Fayette County as a youth. I know who Sheriff Jim is, and I can firmly say that I am a friend of Sheriff Jim. And but I also remember when the Pearl Beer Truck did the announcements and the music at the county fair. And so I've been part of Fayette County for a long time. I grew up in southern Waller County near Pattison and attended Royal Schools. Went to Texas A&M where I was in the Corps of Cadets and the Ag Band. Later went on to do other things. I've been a soldier, retired from 21 years in the Texas Army National Guard, including 3 infantry tours in Iraq after 9/11. I have been a county commissioner. I've been a school teacher, and currently I am the general manager of the Berkshire-Katy Drainage District. Of course, I've been involved in the community for as long as I can remember, whether that's the Lions Club or being on the Veterans Memorial Board or many other things in our community to put me in touch with what goes on at the local level. And I don't know of many people that have more time and over their whole adult life that has day-to-day constituent level work where we're dealing with the public and individuals to solve problems for our communities. And we've had a good record of that. The last session, in spite of the publicity and the confusion with Congress, your Texas legislature passed a lot of good legislation. And you have Republicans working for you in the legislature. And while I don't agree with all of them all the time, none of us do, I think that we can be proud of the Republicans that we have representing us. And they are working hard. They're elected by people just like us from across the county, people with the same concerns. There's not a person in this room that doesn't worry about where our country and our state is going, but your Texas legislature is fighting for you, and I was proud to be part of that. Thank you.
First question, we're going to start with Tim. Explain how your personal background, education, and work experience make you the best candidate for state rep.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm a professional engineer. And when I stamp a drawing, I don't just flippantly stamp it. I have to know every little bit of that drawing and what goes into it, and I have to do the calculations behind it. I have to think about the repercussions that are coming after it, and it's something that has been ingrained in me by the other engineers I studied under, how to be a good engineer. As an engineer, I'm very, very detailed. As a state rep, you have to be very, very detailed. You have to understand every word in that bill that's being presented. You have to understand what the repercussions are, whether you pass this legislation or you don't pass this legislation, or you add other amendments or change the bill. I am capable of understanding legalese, although I'm not a lawyer, and that will go a long, long ways toward being a really good state representative. Additionally, I'm a volunteer firefighter EMT, and I'm a disaster engineer with Texas Task Force 1. In those roles, I get out and see a lot of people, and I've served the community for a long time, and I have a lot of interactions with people, a lot of times on the worst day of their life. And taking that experience to Austin will help me be the best state representative we have for this area, for this district.
I went over some of my work experience, but part of what I think sets me apart and helps me understand you and the voters of our district is I come from you. I've been involved in the Republican Party since the days that we flipped Texas from Democrat to Republican. I helped flip Waller County from Democrat to Republican. I've been right there with you. I've been a poll judge. I've been a precinct chair for many years. We've helped do these things that we talk about, the grassroots. I've been to the state convention, helped write the platform. I understand those things. But having, again, the experience of daily helping people with their problems, looking for real solutions, not the theoretical, but things that actually make a difference and solve the problems that people have has proved invaluable to me as your representative. And I think it's made us effective and proven why we were one of the most effective representatives in the Texas House. When I was asked to run because the potential incumbent was one of the least effective members in the Texas House, and before it was over, I was ranked number 7 out of 150 on effectiveness, and I'm pretty proud of that and proud to bring that back to House District 85 to represent you.
Question number 2, we're going to start with Stan. Describe the importance of grassroots participation and how it would affect your day-to-day decision and policy making.
Well, again, I've been part of that, and I've never left that. There are a lot of people across our state. There's a lot of people across our district. Certainly, there's many differences of opinion. But in general, there's a lot of good people across our district. We have a great district. It's important as a representative, again, as a county commissioner. I tell people, man, this state representative job's easy. I was a county commissioner, and that can be pretty rough. But you've got to be able to deal with people. You've got to understand the issues, and the grassroots comes from different directions sometimes, but we're all pulling the same way on the Republican side for our conservative values, and that's less government, less taxes, and less intrusion into our lives.
Absolutely. Grassroots participation is 100% critical. I received no money from lobbyists. That's unique in this race. I've received no money from special interests. That's also unique in this race. I am a total grassroots candidate. In fact, I'm endorsed by Grassroots of America, We the People. They run a website called grassrootspriorities.com. I highly recommend y'all read it and go there, and you can see how legislators compare to one another. Grassroots are how we change this state and this nation. Lobbyists and special interests aren't going to get it done. Career politicians aren't going to get it done. We're in desperate times and desperate place as a state. We have to have the grassroots stand up and take back our representative positions.
Tim, question number 3. In a time when grassroots conservatives are concerned about electing Republicans in name only, how would you convince us that you would support true conservative Republican priorities?
Absolutely. So for starters, I'm a true believer. And when I started running, I have a friend of mine named James. He's a constable over in Austin County. And I sat down and I was going to write, what I thought and believe. And he said, "Why are you doing that? Just go look at the 2022 Republican Party platform. That's what you believe." I promise you it is, because we've had lots of discussions. I went and looked, and sure enough, I had to get through 3/4 of that document before I found one sub-bullet point that I had a minor disagreement with. The answer is, grassroots make their voice heard in the Republican Party platform and the Republican Party priorities. You want to save Texas? Implement that platform. It's an amazing document. And I will work hard to implement that platform in Austin. The problem in Austin is that they aren't listening to us, they aren't listening to grassroots priorities, and they aren't listening to the Republican Party platform. Look at our legislative priorities and how many got done. It was very few. A few of them had some, I would say, they were some show bills that didn't actually accomplish the goal of what we were attempting to accomplish. And I will work hard to make sure all of our priorities are implemented.
Well, it's just not accurate to say we didn't try to implement Republican priorities. We banned gender mutilation in children. We banned male participation in women's sports. We gave you the largest tax cut in the history of the nation after you voted for it. We listened to you, and we did that. That took Republicans doing that. We passed a whole suite of bills for the border, not the least of which, finally, under Texas law, gives the governor and his law enforcement the authority to take people who illegally enter our country and send them back from whence they came. That didn't exist before. And believe me, if Democrats were in charge, they wouldn't have passed that. It's your Republican legislature that got that done and gave the governor the tools he needed, as well as the funding to make it happen. We work every day to do the things that we're concerned about right here in LaGrange, Texas, and in Fayette County. Do we get 100%? No. Ain't y'all ever been on a church committee to try to build a new building? Okay, well, this is 150 people, all with their own egos. They're all type A personalities and their own goals. And somehow at the end, we still managed to do some very important things for the state of Texas, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Question 4, we start with Stan. What are your thoughts on the elimination of property taxes, and in your opinion, is there a viable alternative to the current system?
We've been through these discussions a lot. It's always on people's minds in the legislature. The problem is I've yet to see a viable return for that. The most common is the increase in sales tax, and if we wanted to bump our sales tax to about 25 to 30%, then maybe that would work. That doesn't work in other parts of the state, where if we increased our prices that much, people would go shop in Oklahoma or New Mexico and kill our local businesses. So there's always some opposition to that, a viable alternative. We did return, though, $18 billion this session. And I will tell you, after talking to the governor and other people in the legislature, that's not the end. I think everyone is excited after that to go back in the next session and see what else we can do to further minimize property taxes. The property tax model, I believe, is outgrown. No one in those days ever envisioned a house that cost $300,000 and land that was selling for $50,000 an acre. And we have to do something different, and I think that the legislatures and the governor are committed to keep doing that.
We have a fundamental right to life, liberty, and property, but property is the only one we tax. I think that is wrong. You have, every time I go pay my property taxes, I always joke, say, I'm here to pay my government rent for my property. We have got to eliminate it. Now, as far as alternatives, I've seen several. I'd like to replace it with some kind of consumption tax. I agree that we can't just eliminate property taxes today without replacing some sort of funding mechanism. That said, the state budget has tripled in the last 12 years or so. Part of the problem with taxation is spending. Government can't spend what it doesn't tax. And so we need to curb spending at the state level as well. The last thing I'll end with is this. The property tax bill that passed, it was better than nothing. But it's far, far, far off from what we need. And the most fundamental thing is it doesn't address the real problem. The problem is the appraisal system. The problem is not being able to predict what your taxes are going to be next year, because you don't know what some government bureaucrat in Austin is going to decide what your property is worth and call your county appraisal district and tell them how much they need to raise your rates or raise your property value. Although they attempted to increase the homestead exemption and they put a cap on commercial property for the first time, that's still not solving the fundamental problem of solving the appraisal system. Ooh, I see the whistle. I'm good. Play to the whistle.
All right, question number 5. We're going to start with Tim. Which of the legislative priorities adopted by delegates at the last Republican state convention are the most important, and why, and explain any you disagree with?
First of all, I'll take that in reverse order. I don't disagree with any of them. The legislative priorities hit it 100%. Which one's the most important? Well, if you look at how they're written in the order, can I move this without, there we go, sorry. All right, so if you look at the way they're written in order, I think they're written in order of importance. And number 1 is election integrity. If we lose elections, that has got to be the most important. Securing the border is number 2. The securing the border is probably a more immediate emergent threat that probably needs to be handled. But if we lose elections to Democrats, they will take over, they will continue to cheat, and that's it. All it's going to take is one time losing to Democrats, and our state will be over. We're not going to have a secure border. We're not going to be able to stop sexualizing children. We're not going to be able to work on transitioning of children. And unfortunately, the next one I would say, the election integrity, the border has to be secured from Brownsville to El Paso. And the transgender movement for the children is transgender movement in general is got to be pushed back against, but especially for children. Although we stopped the medical transitioning of children, we had an opportunity to vote against social transitioning of children. Senate Bill 14, I've looked over many times. Stan actually co-sponsored it along with a bunch of other people in the House. It only deals with medical transitioning. It does not deal with social transitioning, which is where you go to a counselor, and the counselor says, hey, boy, you can be a girl, girl, you can be a boy. There was an amendment to House Bill 1898, Amendment number 1, and 11 Republicans voted against that amendment. Hey, wait a minute, she held that up after you voted.
The border is the number 1 issue across Texas, and it's the number 1 issue in our district. We declared an invasion. We declared that the cartels are terrorist organizations. And again, we took unprecedented measures against the Democrats to secure our border. And I will tell you today, although it hadn't gotten the publicity that I wished it had, your Texas law enforcement, Department of Public Safety, and National Guard have made great strides under the governor to secure our border. The immigration of people coming to us in the last few weeks has shifted to the other states, Arizona, California, and New Mexico. You may have seen that the governor just declared a forward operating base on the border. That is the Texas National Guard setting up a base just like we had in Iraq to help our people secure the border. The other priorities I addressed earlier, we will continue to address those. I'm never going to tell you it's the end of the story, but we got that stuff passed, and nobody else has done that before. And the current leadership and the members, your Republican members, got those issues passed against opposition. So thank you.
Stan, question number 6. MAGA is not just a symbol of Donald Trump, but a movement of grassroots citizens to make America great again. How does this America First position resonate with you?
Well, I've always felt America first. That's one of the reasons I've been involved, like you, at the local level and as far up as I could get in politics. I didn't just become a Johnny-come-lately on this. I do agree that President Trump stands there between us and what the bad guys want to do to us. He's the one taking the flack, but we're the target. And so I support President Trump. I believe in what he's trying to do. We're going to do our best to get him reelected again. And I can tell you that the voter fraud that happens in other states is not what's happening here in Fayette County. We increased the penalty for voter fraud back to being a felony in Texas, and we'll continue to do that. But MAGA, it's, as you know, is unprecedented in the intensity that the people of the United States feel, but especially in Texas, and more especially in our district. And we're here to make sure that we're protected. If the federal government is not going to do their job, then Texas will. But I'm confident if we can change the president, we will be on the way to getting a lot of our federal issues fixed, because I believe he understands better now what he's up against, and we will be looking forward to that day come November.
It resonates amazing. I'm a huge supporter of Donald Trump, and I'm so tired of being stabbed in the back by Republican politicians. And the MAGA movement is about putting the Republican Party back on the focus of America first. Stop giving our money overseas. Stop spending money on special interests. Stop spending money on lobbyists. Implement policies that people need and want. Implement grassroots movement agenda like the Republican priorities, the Republican Party platform. So I'm all for it. The other guy who's all for that is Ken Paxton. I've been endorsed by Ken Paxton. He is fighting the Biden administration tooth and nail. He continues to fight the Biden administration to this day. He's a large reason why the border is secured. The governor deserves a lot of credit, but so does Ken Paxton for continuing to fight behind the scenes for the lawsuits that come our way from the federal government. And if you're going to be a MAGA person, you've got to realize what we're facing and the depth of the people that are against us. And Ken Paxton understands that. He should never have been impeached. And I stand on the fact that we need him to continue to be our Attorney General. He's done more good for us than any other Attorney General that we've ever had, in my opinion. And that's all part of that MAGA group, the MAGA agenda, which I'm proud to be a part of.
Tim, question number 7. Regarding the restrictions on gatherings, business closures, and masks forced upon us by the state during the COVID crisis, did you support them? And if so, what was the constitutional basis?
I did not support them at all. When I first heard that you were going to force us to wear a mask, my first thought was, I'm an American and you're not going to tell me what to do ever. You're the government. You don't get to do that. We are free to run our businesses the way we want to run them. As long as we don't take away the rights of other people, we should be free to do what we want to do and live our lives the way we want to live them. There is no constitutional basis for the mask mandates, for social distancing, for shutting down your business. Absolutely not. And we need to make sure that never happens again. We need to pass legislation in this state that says, it's sad that we have to say this, but your business is your business. You run it how and way you want to run it. And there should never, the thing that really gets me is beyond the businesses is churches. I really disagree with shutting down businesses. I 100% disagree with shutting down churches. I'm glad that my church kept meeting, and I hope that we never have to have that ever again. We're free Americans, and we've seen that mass civil disobedience works. And if that mask mandate or shutting down your business is ever required, I hope that none of you comply, because I know I will not be.
Well, I did not support them, and as many of you feel that was an intrusion and it was ill-advised, if nothing else. But we passed a law this session that says that your employer cannot force you to get the shot, and we've already gone through that with the session, and I can assure you that myself, along with my colleagues, and you can speak to your senator, she can speak for herself, but I'm fairly confident that we make sure that kind of thing never happens to Texans again. And there's no support for that in the Republican Party or the Republican delegates, and we're dedicated to that, and we're committed to making sure that you get to live free and you will not be imposed upon like that again.
Stan, question number 8. How do you intend to make yourself accessible to the citizens in your district and responsive to their needs?
Well, I've had the good fortune of having a small staff, and I assure you that their phone rings pretty much constantly. And mine does as well. My phone number is out there for anyone to have. It always has been in my public life, whether it's county commissioner or president of the Chamber of Commerce or whatever else. It's 832-298-7504. And I can't say that I'm the best secretary in the world. Sometimes I miss things. But we're here to listen, and we do have to explain why we made decisions that we did. Sometimes people don't agree with that. Anyone that's been in public life, we got anybody here that's been a public official? And okay, and you get all kinds of phone calls, and you get all kinds of people that are concerned. But we try to listen to that. We're open, and be glad to visit with people anytime we can.
How do you intend to make yourself accessible to the citizens in your district and responsive to their needs?
Absolutely. I have my phone number on all of my business cards, and it's on my push cards and everything that you have out there. It's on my website. It's been on my Facebook page. You're welcome to call anytime, text, however you like. And the office has to be run by a professional who knows how to run a district office. And if you call that office, you better get a call back. If you email, you're going to get emailed back. We pay attention to who. It's very important to me that we answer every email. Unfortunately, thanks to big tech censorship, I've had several people talk to me about filling out the contact page on my website. It doesn't come through. I just had one gentleman today mention that he's emailed me twice. I just checked my phone. It's not in my inbox. It's not in my junk folder. So we just went around it. I just changed, while we were sitting here earlier, changed it to now it doesn't have that form anymore. Just gives you my website, my email, and my phone number. So we're going to have to work around the Democrats, work around big tech, but it's important that you be able to access your representative. And that's what we'll make sure that we implement in our office for sure.
Tim, question number 9. Describe the concept of nullification, and would you use it to defend our rights against unconstitutional rules promulgated by federal agencies?
Absolutely. So nullification is where a state comes in and says, hey, this is not constitutional. This rule doesn't apply one way or another. And yes, federal agencies, we have got to push back against them. We have FBI agents in our churches. We have, one of the questions you had earlier for one of the other forums was regarding force reset triggers and pistol braces. We should not recognize those rules in Texas. We should have local law enforcement that is at the call for our local citizens, where if the federal government comes in and tries to enforce these rules that are not constitutional, that the local law enforcement will arrest the federal law enforcement or at least prevent them from enforcing unconstitutional rules.
Of course, nullification is a constitutional issue. It's been brought out before and been settled as the law of the land for a long time. But I'm going to give you an example of nullification that is very, very recent. In the park in Eagle Pass, the Texas Army National Guard conducted an operation in the middle of the night and secured that park and removed the federal agents from that park and denied them access. The federal agents came back, and because they do have a right to go to the boat ramp that's there, and they said, well, we want to go to the boat ramp. And the private on duty said, where's your boat? And sent them back. Then they said, well, we want to follow the trail around and go out the other side. And they said, no. So you're seeing an example, especially in the border, where the governor and your Texas legislature are standing up to federal overreach in order to protect us, the citizens of Texas. And that is hot off the presses and happening today. And I think you're gonna see that, Texas is willing to stand up more to the federal government.
Stan, question number 10. In order for citizens to gauge your effectiveness, what results would we look to in order to assess your performance?
Well, you can look at the record of the legislature. Again, it's a little hard for me to talk about, but there is a seniority is a deal in the legislature. When you start out as a freshman, you have no reasonable expectation to pass a bill. And in the old days, they would tell you if you're a freshman, you're not going to pass a bill. So that means you don't get to do anything for your district. I went there to work. I was there every day. And again, out of 150, when the smoke cleared, I had bills filed versus bills passed. I was ranked number 7 out of 150, and I can tell you that's far ahead of any other freshman. I think that I gained the respect of the members and the people who deal with the committees that I was on, the Agriculture and Livestock Committee, as well as Natural Resources, both of which are very important to our district. I think my reputation among those that work there, and it's not the bureaucrats, they just know that I'm gonna shoot straight with them and be honest with them. But I went there to be your representative, and as a freshman, I think we achieved that. When you elect me to go back and I'm a sophomore, the best part of that's gonna be not being a freshman anymore, and we'll get more done. Thank you.
That whistle, man. It's coming. Absolutely. Well, for starters, like the website I mentioned earlier, grassrootspriorities.com, that is a fantastic website because they don't impose their own ideas or agendas in there. They just take data from Texas Ledge Online. Texas Ledge Online is done confusing on purpose so you can't actually follow most of what your representatives and senators do. Grassrootspriorities.com takes that information, pulls it out, and puts it into places where you can filter it, sort it, and understand it, and then compare it to the Republican Party platform and Republican legislative priorities. So definitely recommend you go there. Unfortunately, that is after the fact. They only do, you can't see that live during the session, although hopefully they'll change that. It's only compiled after the session. The other thing is, what does it mean to be an effective representative? I say it means representing our values in Austin. Our district does not want Democrat chairs. We don't want Dade Phelan. We don't buy the lie that this is one of the most conservative legislatures ever. We need to change that. So I will not vote for Dade Phelan to be speaker. That's the first vote you can find as if I'm being an effective representative or not. I will not vote for Dade Phelan under any circumstances. No one in our district wants that. That does mean I'll be on the floor mopping committee if he wins, and we'll have some fantastic floors. I see the whistle coming. I'm good.
Tim, question 11. With many citizens disenfranchised by corrupt government and no longer participating, what should be done to restore confidence and trust in the system and re-engage apathetic citizens?
That is a tough one. That is that had been a great question for Deborah and Mike earlier. For starters, the reason you got to look at why they're apathetic. They're apathetic because they're tired of Republican politicians saying one thing and doing another. They're tired of Republican politicians voting to spend taxpayer money on socially transitioning kids. They're tired of waking up and finding out that Ken Paxton's been impeached. They're tired of voting for a Biden mileage tax study. You got to start, if you want to re-engage them, you've got to do what you say you're going to do, which is implement a conservative agenda. And then you can't go around lying about it afterwards, saying that it was the most conservative session ever, when it wasn't. I mean, how much of our agenda did we get passed? Very, very little. So that's, for starters, is you got to perform and at least stand up. At least stand up for our priorities. You may not get them all passed because there's a lot of rhinos in the House. But if we stand up and as more and more stand up, our numbers will grow, just like the Freedom Caucus at the federal level. And eventually we'll get to where we can actually implement the Republican Party agenda that we need to implement. That's the number one way to get those people back into the fold, if you will. And we call it being black-pilled. Get them out of being black-pilled and back into participating in our republic.
Well, first, by any measure, we did have an outstanding session. The last two sessions have been rated as the most conservative sessions in recent memory. And you can go back and look. I mean, the heartbeat bill, nobody ever passed that before. They did. Open carry, constitutional carry, nobody passed that before. For all those years, they did. The tax cut, on down the line. We did those things. One of the problems we have is there are people that make money off of fracturing the Republican Party. If you'll notice, all they do is attack Republicans. They don't go after one Democrat. If we don't like Democrats in the Texas House of Representatives, let's go beat Democrats. Let's go get them. But you don't hear these people say that. The constant drumbeat and what turns people off is that Republicans are the problem. You've got some good Republicans working for you. We need to replace the Democrats. We need to make it so people feel welcome to come to meetings and they're not getting shouted down and yelled at. And we need to make sure that the propaganda people aren't overloading our population with bad information and misinformation. And they target Republicans, and they make a lot of money off of that, and they like to see us fight amongst ourselves. We're all on the same side. We agree on 98% of everything. I can guarantee it. Thank you, sir.
Stan, question number 12. Given the dubious nature of the so-called green energy movement, do you support special tax incentives for green energy projects in Texas?
I do not. We could talk for a minute and a half about that. But again, the main issue with that is federal subsidies, not the state. And I think if we had more to do with the state, we could do about it. But you do get back into private property rights. And does someone have a right with their property to do solar farms and wind farms? I don't like it. I think it's a scam. I think that, especially with the subsidies, they surely can't pay for themselves. They can't survive. They're not what we need. Anybody that goes to the ERCOT app and looks, you got an app from ERCOT that'll show you what you're getting your energy from at any given moment. And wind and solar only work, I guess wind's working good today, maybe. But it's still natural gas, it's still nuclear, it's still coal. And that's where we get our energy, and that's what keeps the Texas economy moving. And so that's a long answer to a very short question, so thank you.
No, I do not. Stan hit that answer right on the nail. There's one minor addition I would make to that, though. In the past, there have been state subsidies to solar and wind regarding infrastructure upgrades. And we need to make sure that those continue to no longer be the case. So if you want to build a coal plant or a nuclear plant, you are responsible for all the substations and the distribution lines and making sure that you can connect your power that you're making to the grid. With solar and wind, the state has subsidized that to a large degree because they add the infrastructure instead of the wind farm or the solar farm going in. So we need to eliminate that. I agree with Stan completely. Without federal subsidies, no one would ever build a solar or wind farm. And I don't believe in climate change or global warming at all. I think it's a death cult. If they had their way, billions around the world would die. We've got to push back against the World Economic Forum and their climate change agenda. And they don't believe it either, by the way. Barack Obama owns a property on Martha's Vineyard with the largest propane tank on Martha's Vineyard. Okay? So he doesn't believe in he doesn't believe in climate change either. Just so you know, it's just a control mechanism. We got to push back against it.
Tim, question number 13. Would you support Dade Phelan for House Speaker? Explain why or why not.
Absolutely not. He is not a conservative. He's killed more conservative legislation through him or his lieutenants than anyone else in Texas in recent history. He appointed a Democrat parliamentarian that allowed a lot of point of orders to kill a lot of bills. We didn't have Republicans on the floor that would stand up and stand up against those point of orders. And no. Dave Phelan is number one issue with our state. He's got to go. So he's our number one issue with our state representatives, our House representatives. He's got to go. we gotta be careful. That's not the only solution. He's got a lot of lieutenants around him that are just as bad, like J.C. DeTon and a few others. So Dave Phelan's the number one, but he's certainly not the only problem. We've got to get rid of all of those guys and return the House of Representatives back to the people.
As I did last time, I will support the most conservative, viable candidate for Speaker. And here's how it works, and this comes from what the grassroots wanted, because it is true that you used to have a Speaker that would get all the Democrats and just a handful of Republicans, and they would be Speaker. That's not what happened this time. We didn't need a single Democrat to elect the Speaker of the House. Okay? What happens is we go into caucus, and people are nominated. You vote as a caucus. That means just the Republicans. And you vote on a secret ballot who you support, so everybody can vote their conscience. Then, of those nominees, whoever wins that, the Republicans are supposed to come out and back that person against whoever the Democrats propose, so we have a united front as Speaker. Dave Phelan got all but 4 votes in that caucus meeting. Okay? And I will tell you that if Dave Phelan had never been born and you never heard his name, the other guy would still not be Speaker of the House. Somebody else would have stood up to do that. And again, under Dave's leadership, you got the heartbeat bill, you got constitutional carry, you got blocking transgender mutilation of children, you got the tax cut, on down the list. A lot of those things we've been struggling for years, and we got them because of that leadership.
Stan, question, we're going to skip around. We're going forward because of time. Question 16, if you had the authority, what would you do to stop the invasion of illegal aliens across the southern border?
So this is a hypothetical thing, or what we actually did? And again, like I said before, we dedicated $6 billion to the border. We have given the commander-in-chief, our governor, the tools he needs. We've given him the laws he needs, and we will give him what else he needs if he asks for it next time to secure the border. Is it still a problem? It is. But the other day at Eagle Pass, and I don't know what it is today, in all fairness, but where the average daily crossing at Eagle Pass was in the thousands per day, that was cut down to 7. That's happening. And again, your National Guardsmen and your troopers are there every day, and they're able to do what they do now because we changed the law. And the number of people coming to America has not changed, but they're going to California and New Mexico as opposed to coming to Texas. Now, what will that be like tomorrow? I can't tell you, except that with that forward operating base, Texas is serious about securing the border. We're building the Trump wall. We're building other barriers. We're stretching concertina wire, and believe me, I got more experience than anybody in the legislature at stretching concertina wire. I know how to do it. But we're doing that. That is happening right now in your legislature, the House and the Senate, along with the governor, and our law enforcement and National Guardsmen are doing.
Okay, so I'm going to interpret your question as you're asking if I was the governor, how would I do that? I would build a physical barrier between El Paso and Brownsville. We've started that, but we haven't done nearly enough. $7 billion, $6 billion, whatever it is, isn't enough. Also, the law that was passed in the last legislative session, it was such a priority for them that it doesn't implement until March 4th. It needs to be implemented immediately. It's still a few weeks away before that law is even on the books. Secondly, besides stopping them at the border, we've also got to make it impossible for illegal aliens to continue to live here. There should be no illegal aliens in our public school system. It should be illegal to rent property or sell property to illegal aliens. It should be illegal to sell vehicles to illegal aliens. It should be illegal to drive if you're an illegal alien. There's only one place for you to go if you're an illegal alien. That is out of our country back to where you came from. Our country is made of immigrants. None of us here, unless you're Native American, all of us have immigrant parents at some point in our history. We have a big, wide front door. We are better with immigrants who come here and want to be American, want to assimilate and add to our culture. You have immigrant stories all over the place, including in our district, Trump Burger, if you've ever been there in Belleville, owned by some Lebanese Americans. They're fantastic. And they would actually correct me. They'd say, hey, we're Americans from Lebanon. Those are the immigrants we need. We should make it impossible for illegal aliens to live here.
Tim, question number 20. Knowing Ken Paxton's vices and virtues, the grassroots elected him as the powerful attorney general that Texas needs in these difficult times. Yet the House of Representatives impeached him on charges that failed to be upheld by the Senate. What is your assessment of these circumstances?
First off, we didn't hire Ken Paxton to be our pastor. We hired him to be our attorney general and sue the Biden administration, and he's been doing that. Did Ken Paxton do those things or not? I saw what the Senate saw, which was basically I didn't see any evidence that was worth impeaching him over. Additionally to that, if you have a case, you don't railroad somebody through at the end. If you have a case, you present the case, and you let the other guy, you let the guy accused actually have a word. You know, he gets to defend himself. He should be innocent until proven guilty. Now, I've heard that the impeachment process functions as kind of a grand jury. I would say there are some aspects of it that are like a grand jury, but it is not a grand jury. It is something totally different. And unlike at the federal level, at the state level, if you impeach somebody, they're out of office until the trial happens. That's why we went through 2 other attorney generals this summer, because they were ineffective and not doing the job that we elected Ken Paxton to do. We should not have ever impeached Ken Paxton. Dan Patrick's comments after that, I highly encourage you to go look them up. It just shows a lack of leadership in the House and a lack of understanding of what we're facing. We don't need a perfect person. I'd love to have a bunch of attorney generals where, hey, you might have misstepped out of line, let's go to the next guy. Until you show me the next effective person who's going to sue the Biden administration as much as Ken Paxton does, Ken Paxton is my guy.
There is no separating Ken Paxton and his vices versus his virtues. As you might well guess, that's the most controversial decision that was made all session. And it warrants scrutiny, but it's not something that I did in some kind of flippant or lighthearted manner. I've been in public office. I've had people accuse me and others of doing things that weren't true. I would not have made that vote if I did not think there was something sincere to look at. And there was. It's the abuse of power. When we flipped Texas from Democrat to Republican, we were getting away from people who said, well, he did all that, but he's our guy. That's very dangerous. Okay? Now, the still indicted Ken Paxton, who will be going to trial in April in Houston, is our Attorney General. I guarantee you, any Republican in that position in Texas would be standing up for us against the Joe Biden administration. Now, the only person that is responsible for us even having to discuss this is Ken Paxton. You have to behave yourself in office. You have to live up to your oath. And abusing the power of your office against citizens of Texas cannot be justified.
Stan, question 21. Given the content of the Emergency Powers Act, should the governor really have the authority to suspend fundamental natural rights, which are secured by the Constitution during declared emergencies?
Well, we know that much of that came from post-World War II in the nuclear age and in the Cold War. And that's where our order of, precedent comes from and who's going to be president, vice president, on down the line. We do the same thing in the legislature. We appoint different citizens that if Austin got nuked and wiped us all out, who's going to be the legislature? Where do we have continuity? So those kind of laws and authorities come from that. Where we've got to temper that is to make sure that it is very clear when those things would absolutely have to be implemented. And I think we were all very concerned about how that got used in COVID, how it got misused in COVID. And again, I believe that the legislature and my colleagues want to ensure that that kind of thing never happens again.
No, never. You have a fundamental right to life, liberty, and property. And along with that, other, all the other rights that are along with that, like self-defense, running your business, etc. Now, I think the governor has a right to recommend you shut your business down because a hurricane's coming. I think the governor has the right to recommend you not go to this area because a hurricane's coming or a tornado just happened. But at the end of the day, we can't make people leave. As a disaster engineer with Texas Task Force 1, I go out all over the place, all over the state after these natural disasters. And we are told that if someone leaves their home, that they don't have, they may or may not be able to come back in if we're doing operations in that area for the safety of the first responders. But as soon as we're out of that first responder, as soon as we're out of that area, they have a right to come back to their property. Now, other people who don't have business there, we can keep out, but I don't believe we have a right to keep people out of their property. We don't have a right to tell people what to do. We live in a free country. You are free to live as you like, even in the middle of a natural disaster or a major terrorist event or whatever.
Tim, question number 24. Do you support red flag gun confiscation orders in situations where a neighbor, family member, or someone else has claimed they believe someone is dangerous? Please explain.
Absolutely not. Again, you have a fundamental right to life, liberty, and property. And inherent in that right to life, liberty, and property is the right to defend your life, liberty, and property with whatever happens to be around, whether that's your fist or a rock or a firearm. And I think that you should be able to lose your gun rights provided you go through due process and you're a felon. If you're a convicted violent felon, you should not be allowed to have a gun. Beyond that, if short of that, absolutely not. And we see that's one of those laws that the Democrats implemented that sound really good. I mean, because nobody out here wants to hear, if somebody's truly in that situation, nobody wants to see that person get a gun and hurt somebody. But where we see these red flag laws across our country are being abused by people who just dislike whoever they're going against in a divorce case or a civil case. And you cannot suspend natural God-given rights without due process. And red flag laws do not provide due process in the slightest.
Of course, we had time to sit here and ponder. I could come up with something else, but I don't know of any other law or type of law that is set into place that is deliberately intended to be misused once they get it. So the answer is no, I don't support red flag laws because the whole idea is to be able to find some excuse to take your firearms away from you. And ever since the first caveman had another caveman try to take his brontosaurus steak from him, he had a right to defend himself. And you have that right, and if it becomes adjudicated that there's some reason that you shouldn't have a firearm, then that's one thing. But there's a process for that now. But red flag laws, letting somebody who's mad at you because you cut them off in traffic go down and file something against you and your guns are confiscated is foolishness. The right shall not be infringed. It's pretty plain. Thank you.
Stan, question number 18. Again, apologize for jumping around, but we were trying to abbreviate for time, but y'all have been very gracious with time. So we got two more questions. Question number 18. Most Republicans believe that schools should stick to teaching basic skills and ban teaching critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, and other social engineering concepts. Explain why you do or do not agree.
Well, I agree, and again, in the legislature this session, we addressed some of those issues. I'm not going to tell you it's the end, but I think we made a big step forward, again, with opposition. The Republicans advanced that. We banned DEI at the colleges. They're maybe attempting to go around it, but one way to make the legislature come back and hit you again is try to do something like that. So if they do, I'm sure we'll be taking it up again with something even stronger. Subjecting our children to, it doesn't even count as pornography, the horrific stuff that's in some of these books in the school library, we ban that. Again, a whole series of laws that address the things in this question. The current legislature took that up and we addressed it. And we have to protect our children. I'm proud to have been part of that. And we'll continue to work that. You know, one of the things I worked on too is trafficking of children through our district. And we're going to continue to work on that as well.
I agree, it should be completely banned. I have two small children, one who's in first grade, one who's going to be in kindergarten next year, 4 and 7, and I am hyper focused on them. They go to public school in Sealy, and I feel bad for their teachers because the state mandates them fill out endless amounts of paperwork. And not so much in first grade, but starting in third grade when they have to start taking the tax test. All the teachers seem to do is the tax test. I'd like to see us get away from a ton of regulations on teachers and let teachers get back to teaching. You know there's a fundamental problem when children in one-room schoolhouses in the 1800s are better at reading, writing, and arithmetic than our students are today graduating high school. As far as CRT, that's not helping at all. There's a new thing, CRT was banned. There's a new thing now called SEL, Social and Emotional Learning. I've met with quite a few administrators in the Austin County area, and they tell me that this is happening, and we've got to ban that next. So it'll be a question like, Pedro can't afford Pedro needs a 15-cent bus fee. He only has 10 cents. How short is he? They'll answer the question, then they'll ask, well, should Pedro be allowed to get on the bus even though he doesn't have the money? You know, they take a math problem and they turn it into a social commentary. That's happening in our rural schools today, and we've got to stop that. We've got to get back to basics: reading, writing, math, science.
Tim, last prepared question number 19. Should parents and guardians have the right to select schools for their children, whether public or private, with state funding dollars that follow the student? Explain your answer.
Absolutely yes. The purpose of the education system is to educate children. We don't want to eliminate our public school system. I think that the public school system is very important to have. However, the state, the government, whatever level, whether it's state, county, or school board, should not be making parental decisions for the parent. Parents have a right to decide where their children go to school, what type of school they attend, whether that's homeschool, pod schools, private schools, charter schools, public schools. And if we have got to, I've heard from both sides of this argument, and the other side is a lot of the private school and homeschoolers say if you give us money, then that will oftentimes come with strings. And that's kind of happened around the nation. So the answer is to be very, very careful and not provide it with strings. Additionally, we want to increase competition. Right now, there are no rules for private schools or homeschools. You do as you see fit. The answer is not add rules to them. The answer is remove rules from the public school and let the local public school boards run their schools more effectively.
Well, I believe that's true, and that's why I supported the bill that would have done that. We have a problem in Texas, and it's hard for people to talk about because they're usually on either side, but the problem is that parents are losing faith in our public education system. And I'm not talking about a specific district that's doing a good job, I'm talking about overall. And the symptoms of this are parents are looking for alternatives for their children. They know what their children are coming home with and they don't like it. But the teachers are quitting because the teachers don't have support from anybody. And you don't just go get new teachers off the unemployment line. Teaching starts right here. And once you've destroyed that, you've lost that person. And that's, to me, going to be a bigger crisis in the immediate future than even the other. But parents have a right to do what they think is best for their children. And I do not think, though, the argument is they act like the whole Texas school system will collapse overnight. If that happens, I don't believe that's true. I think the competition will help us lift our public education schools back to where they ought to be, so that maybe they're the choice that the parents want again. That's what we want. We love our Grange Leopards and our Katy Tigers and our Royal Falcons. But when a parent is not confident that their child is either one being miseducated or not educated at all, or filled with some kind of gobbledygook instead of learning to read and write and do math, they want a choice and they have a right to do that. And I think the state of Texas ought to help them, and we'll see what happens next session, because there's a lot of dynamic going on right now across the state about that.
Thank you, candidates. That concludes the prepared questions, and we will gather questions from the audience. All right, candidates. So we've got 3 audience questions. First question, we're going to go to Tim. What is your position on recapture, aka Robin Hood?
Recapture Robin Hood as in the way it relates to the public schools.
Yes.
I think it's one of those things that is intended to be good, but ultimately it is not. I think local areas can support their own schools. I think a lot of our area ends up losing money. Some of our area ends up gaining money. At the end of the day, I think schools are best when they're as local as possible. And so the Robin Hood money going from a district to the state to be sent out, it's more hands touching it, and it's not fair to either one. So I'd like to see schools funded at the local level and not having, it's basically communism, it's redistribution of wealth. And I disagree with that 100%.
Well, of course, that's imposed on us by the courts. Some of y'all are old enough to remember when we went through all that with Ann Richards and everybody back then and the school finance. You know, Texas wanted public schools from the very beginning in the days of the Republic, and we've never figured out how to pay for them since. And so every session, somebody's got to deal with that. But the recapture idea of Robin Hood comes from that court case years ago. But this year, as part of the budget and then part of the tax plan, the state is paying more of that recapture percentage for the local school districts. So we're actually paying that through other sources, and that may get challenged too. But no, your money raised at your local level needs to stay there. We've got to get around the court case. But the legislature took a stab at that this session.
Stan, second audience question. Do you support banning Democrat chairs from critical committees?
Okay, here's another one that you got to be ready for the answer. Again, my stance is if we don't like Democrats in the Texas legislature, let's go beat them. In my day, we used to try to do that. And but we've got people that apparently aren't worried about Democrats except to use them as a club to beat up Republicans. Here's why that happens. There's a strategy to it. One, it's happened over many sessions. It happens in the Senate. It happens in the House. But the Democrats are not united because we keep them divided. We're not Washington, D.C. Texas is not dysfunctional like Washington, D.C., and that's because there's a strategy involved there. And, you know, again, I don't want Democrat chairs, but until we get rid of them being able to block our stuff, by the way, I'm going to run out of time, it takes 100 votes to even do work that day. It takes 100 votes to pass the Constitutional Amendment, and you got to have some help.
Yes, 100%. First off, if it were flipped and Democrats were in charge, would they appoint any Republicans to any chairs? Of course not. And I would add to you're saying to critical, the question is to critical committees. I would say to all committees. We've got to start realizing where we're at and actually implementing a conservative agenda. And that starts with the committee chairs. The committees are extremely important. Most bills die in committee. We don't get a lot of our conservative legislation out because it's killed in committees. We've got to have not just Republicans, conservative Republicans running committees. And so no, I absolutely support banning Democrat chairs.
Last audience question, Tim. Information that I have been reading about CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency, has me quite concerned. Do you see this as a potential threat to private ownership of finances, and do you think Texas needs a bill similar to South Dakota's House Bill 1199 for protection of our assets?
Absolutely. That the South Dakota House Bill is a fantastic model, and I think we can copy that here and probably even improve it. Yeah, the CBDC is probably the number one threat to our liberty that we're currently facing today. And it's so dangerous because they've updated the uniform code, the commercial code, to have even more codes in it. So I don't know if everybody understands, but when you go buy, for example, groceries and you swipe your card, all of those items you swiped have codes in them, and so the government can track what you buy if you buy it with a card. Same thing, they're trying to do gun banning with the universal code as well, where firearms and ammunition have gotten their own code. So if you have an uppity left-wing bank that doesn't want you buying firearms, they can ban your card from being used for that code. The CBDC is a government version of that, it's dangerous.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a huge threat. It's a huge threat to not only your financial liberty, but your personal liberty. And I think you will probably see a bill on that in the next session. And stand by, because you're probably going to see a bill to let you use your gold too. And so there's people talking about those financial issues, and I think you'll see something about that next session. And so I got 30 seconds left. I'm not for Democrat chairs. I just understand how it happens, and when we can do something about that.
Thank you, candidates. We now have 2 minutes for closing remarks, and we are going to start with Tim.
Thank y'all for coming out today. It's great to see all of you, many of you again. Basically, I'm running because I'm tired of Republicans not doing what they say they're going to do. The impeachment of Kim Paxton, to me, is totally unacceptable. Some of the other votes that were taken by our current representative were unacceptable. Not that everything he did was bad. He did a lot of great things, but there's enough there that we need somebody else in Austin who is going to have our conservative values in Austin. I am not funded by lobbyists. I am not funded by special interest. I am funded by individuals and people just like you. I am endorsed by Grassroots of America. I'm endorsed by Kim Paxton. I am a pro-freedom. I'm a regular person. I've never run for anything in my life. I'm not a professional politician. And I just don't think that professional politicians are going to get us through where we need to get through. They're kind of how we got in this mess in the first place. We need regular people to stand up and take back our state of representatives.
Anyone involved in the political process and running for office is a politician, by definition. They may not be a good one, but they're a politician. I'm proud to be your state representative. I think we have a very good record to take to you, and I look forward to returning as your representative next session, where we will continue to advance the Republican cause. Again, I come from you at the grassroots, at the party. I understand where that comes from, and it was a relief to me personally to be able to go there and try to make a difference on those issues we've been concerned about for years. And you do have people trying to do the right thing. That's not everybody, and it takes work and it takes cooperation. But to get to be your state representative and represent Fayette County along with the others, whom I'm very proud of, is indeed an honor for me. Anybody that thinks I can be bought off doesn't know Stan Kitzman. Anybody that thinks I'm going to be dishonest about something, even though we might disagree on something like the Paxton impeachment, I can guarantee you it came from honest intentions. And I'm always glad to explain it, whether we finally agree or not. We have a wonderful state. It is still the United States of America, and that's the best place on the world to live. And I'm glad to have been a soldier and participated in defending it that way. And I'm glad to be a public servant where we can continue to try to do the good things that keep us free and add to our liberty and help you live the kind of life that you deserve. I'm asking for your vote March the 5th. That's right, isn't it? March the 5th. Please support Stan Kitzman as your state representative.
Thank you, candidates. Next forum is Mike McCall and Jared Lovelace. We're moving on to Congressional District 10. Representative Danny Salazar for Michael McCall, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, y'all. I'm sorry Congressman McCall couldn't be with you here in person, but our cause has never been more important than it is today, and he works every day to advance it. This past week, on Tuesday, he actually led the impeachment of Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas for his horrendous mismanagement of the border crisis. And as well, Congressman McCall has been named to oversee as an impeachment manager to oversee the impeachment trial in the Senate. Ronald Reagan asked the question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Let's take a look. 4 years ago, America had low inflation, low gas prices, and we were energy independent. Our enemies feared us. We projected strength, not weakness. And our border was secure. Under Joe Biden, the world is more dangerous. Biden is projecting weakness at every turn, and our enemies are on the march while Biden is stumbling. Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan was an unmitigated disaster. China is flying spy balloons over our country, and Biden is doing nothing about it. Russia's on the march, and our allies are threatened. Iran is threatening the Middle East. And on October 7th, Hamas invaded Jewish communities, slaughtering women and children, committing atrocities. Today, Hamas still holds more than 100 hostages, including Americans, under Biden's watch. Congressman McCall has always been a leader in Congress on the important issue of standing strong with our ally Israel. In the aftermath of the attacks, he led a delegation to Israel where he met with Prime Minister Netanyahu to affirm America's unwavering support. And while this world is on fire, there's an invasion on our southern border. As the first Texan to chair the Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman McCall is fighting back. He worked with President Trump to build the wall, end catch and release, and get Remain in Mexico on the books, creating the most effective border control this country has seen. Sadly, President Biden has rescinded these policies with the stroke of a pen. The former chief of the Border Patrol told Congressman McCall that this has been a direct cause to the chaos and destruction that we are seeing today. So that's why he's been down at the southern border, meeting with the Border Patrol, and showing the failures of the Biden administration to the entire country. Congressman McCall is proud to have received the endorsements of Governor Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the National Rifle Association, and the Texas Farm Bureau. With that, I want to thank you for everything y'all do to help elect Republicans. Both Congressman McCall and I are proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with y'all. God bless y'all, and God bless Texas.
All right, everyone, thanks for being here. It's a testament to your patriotism to sit here through 3 hours, almost going on 4 hours of a candidate forum. So thank you for staying to the end. Really appreciate your time. I am very honored to sit before you today. This is truly a privilege for me. I am married to my wife, Courtney. We have 3 young children, a 5-year-old who turns 6 next week, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, 2 boys and a girl. We are very much in that busy phase of life with our children, and we love it. We're a homeschool family, and we believe that, we as parents know best how to educate our children. We both have college degrees, and we believe we can do it better than the public system, especially with everything that's saturated in today. My background is in the military and in business. I served as an infantry officer in the U.S. Army. I spent most of my time up in Alaska, in Fairbanks, Alaska, leading riflemen. I led teams of 40 to 140 soldiers at different times. And we trained to defeat the Russians in Arctic warfare. That's what we did. And while I was an Army officer, I was a life counselor for young soldiers living away from home for the first time, figuring out personal finances, figuring out relationships, figuring out how to take care of an apartment and keep it clean. We ran the gauntlet of issues with these young soldiers, but it was such a rewarding time to be there serving them thousands of miles away from home in a very, very extreme climate. And I tell you that to hopefully that gives you a glimpse into my heart a little bit about how I approach leadership in general. And I believe that being a servant to the people is a core task of being a representative. And being a representative requires you to be with the people and to sit down with them and talk to them. And like we've heard several times before today so far, we're not always going to agree on 100% of the issues. My background also is in business. I started 2 startup companies. Neither one made millions of dollars. We had to end up shutting them both down, but we have a rich treasury of lessons learned. At the end of the day, my passion is in finance and entrepreneurship and startups, and I am running in this race because I am tired of waiting around on these very important issues to get solved. What results have you gotten for the last 20 years? It's time to bring in some new ideas, some new leadership, and actually get results. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to prepared questions. And because Mr. McCall is unavailable, all questions will be directed to Jared. First question, explain how your personal background, education, and work experience make you the best candidate for office.
So, serving the military, I feel like, is a very important differentiator in this race. I have volunteered to put my life on the line to serve this country and to defend the U.S. Constitution. Now, the skills that I developed in the military, I was a leader. I led infantry soldiers in complex and asymmetric environments, right? I never deployed into combat because the Army ran out of wars for me to fight. That's part of the reason why I got out. And I wanted to come back home to Texas and get more involved because I was sitting there in Alaska watching all of the government mandates with the masks and the vaccines. I was watching spending just go through the roof. And at the end of the day, it's just common sense. Common sense principles can get results. And so that's what led me to come home to Texas. I didn't know that we were going to run for Congress right away, but after the second company shut down, we were asking around, talking to folks, and nobody had the courage to stand up and run because of the steep advantages that the incumbent has, right? So service in the military, I'm passionate about finance. In the business world, if you don't get results, you get fired. That's how it works, and that's how it should work in government too. Thank you.
Question number 2, please explain to what extent you support foreign wars or funding foreign conflicts.
I do not support foreign spending on any war that does not have a direct impact on our sovereignty, our ability to govern ourselves, and our own borders, okay? War is complicated and it's horrible. And as soon as you start getting involved in a war, you lose control of it, all right? Even if you're just spending money on it. I believe we have way too many more pressing issues here at home to be spending your hard-earned tax dollars overseas in foreign countries that do not have a measurable impact on your daily life. I am running to be a U.S. representative representing citizens of the United States of America, not citizens of foreign countries.
Question number 3, what can be done to stop the non-governmental organizations from perpetuating the border crisis?
The federal government shouldn't be donating any funds to humanitarian nonprofits, NGOs that are facilitating the border issue. So as a federal legislator, I'm going to say no to every spending bill, any kind of support or money that goes to these institutions. I'm going to be totally against it. Now, what private citizens decide to do with their own private money, that's their decision, and I believe that as a federal legislator, I will have no control over that, and I will exercise no control over what private citizens do with their money. So that's where I stand on the issue.
Question number 4, MAGA is not just a symbol of Donald Trump, but a movement of grassroots citizens to make America great again. How does this America First position resonate with you?
Oh, I love it. Donald Trump came in and stirred the pot and showed the public that we can push back against what we call the establishment, right? Elitism in DC, PACs, lobbyists, institutions. He pushed back and challenged all of it. And now we have a movement in place that often gets hijacked by Republicans across the board. They want Trump's brand because, that's what resonates with grassroots voters, right? It's not the elites, it's not the other billionaires, it's not the other lobbyists and PACs, right, in DC that love what Trump represents, what MAGA represents. It's us at the grassroots level. Now, I'm going to preface that with, I support Trump. I supported Trump before it was popular to support Trump after the Iowa caucus. However, I will clarify that as a member of the legislative branch, if Trump is elected president, I will hold Trump accountable for obeying the Constitution and defending our rights just like any other president, okay? So I am loyal, but the U.S. Constitution trumps.
Question number 5. One of the primary powers of the U.S. House is the power of the purse. How should the House best make effective use of this awesome power for the benefit of the people?
This is the core of a lot of our problems. The border is tied to the power of the purse. Our national defense is tied to the power of the purse. If we cannot balance our own budget and take care of our own taxpayer dollars, so many other issues are affected by that. Okay, we spend a lot of money in 2023, $4.44 trillion in tax revenue came in. 90% of that went to what's called mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is not argued over in the annual appropriations process. It's just already signed into law. Not all of it's bad. Some of it's good. Federal retirement, Social Security checks, right? But a lot of it is social entitlements as well that goes to people on welfare, which includes illegal immigrants. We spend way too much money on social welfare. 10% of the budget's left over, or our tax revenues is left over for national defense, which includes the border. We need to flip those priorities. National defense and the border should be mandatory spending. Welfare should be discretionary. It should get argued over every year. At the end of the day, we have got to cut the size of the federal government. It is too large, and it spends way too much money. If we don't fix this now, it'll destroy us before China or Iran or Russia ever could.
Question number 6. What does the phrase American exceptionalism mean to you?
I don't know exactly what's implied by the question, but American exceptionalism, you know what you said? Exceptionalism?
Yes.
Not exceptionalism?
Exceptionalism.
Exceptionalism.
Yes.
I interpret that as America first. I think that we should be legislating based on what the priorities are for our citizens, not for global citizens, okay? We have been the global police for way too long, and we have wasted trillions of, the national debt in the last 20 years has gone up by $26 trillion. We're now at $34.2 trillion. This primary race is about holding our congressmen in Washington, D.C. All of the Republicans who've been there for decades, they need to be held accountable for the lack of results on managing your hard-earned tax dollars. We need to start saying no to more spending bills, not passing continuing resolutions, not raising the debt ceiling anymore. So at the end of the day, it's America first, and we can't be so worried about foreign countries and what they're doing internally that we end up shooting our own foot, essentially.
Question number 7. Do you believe that employers, whether public or private, should be able to discriminate against employees based on vaccination status?
No, period.
Question number 8. Should we remain in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization? Please explain.
I think this question is up for debate. My personal opinion is I think it's outdated and that it's not in our best interest anymore. Now, like I said, I think this would be a productive debate that needs to be had, and so I don't have a firm stance on this, but my question to you, the people, is if our national security is dependent upon whether or not Russia has another border with the NATO alliance, if that is the case, in the instance of Ukraine, if Russia takes over Ukraine, we have another border with Russia, as far as NATO goes. If that is so dangerous to us, and that we are willing to send billions and billions of dollars to prevent that from happening, because we don't want to get into a hot war with Russia, then we need to consider whether or not NATO is actually in our best interest anymore. Is it actually beneficial to us, or is it just traditional? Or is it just traditional? The last 70 years of U.S. foreign policy has been a disaster. Korea was a disaster. Vietnam was a disaster. Iraq's been a disaster. Look how fast Afghanistan fell apart as soon as we pulled out. Say what you will about the Biden administration's decision to just cut ties and leave. Look how fast it fell apart. Democracy building, nation building does not work, and we need to get away from it.
Question number 9. What committees would you like to serve on and why?
As a freshman congressman, I'm not going to get a whole lot of say, and especially the way that I talk about cutting spending and pushing back against the establishment, I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of vote in where I get put. However, what I'm most passionate about is saving your tax dollars and making sure that our money is being put to the right priorities. So being part of the appropriations process would be a dream of mine, because that's where I can make the most impact that affects not just one issue, but several issues. They're all connected to the U.S. House's power of the purse.
Question number 10. Given that it is undeniable that we achieved better results during the U.S. House Speaker McCarthy controversy, despite the messy process, based on your principles, how would you have played that situation?
You know, I wasn't in the room where it happened. I wasn't a part of those conversations where the Republicans were caucusing behind closed doors. You know, a lot of my information I got from the same news that you did. Now, something that's very important to me is I don't allow the news, right or left, center, doesn't matter. I don't allow the news to tell me what to think, okay? So there's a lot of dialogue out there. There's a lot of different strong opinions about how that whole process went down. At the end of the day, my values are such that we need to represent, we need a chair or a speaker of the House who is committed to honoring, obviously, taxpayer dollars and your hard-earned taxpayer dollars, honoring the U.S. Constitution, not voting based on transactions, but rather vote on principles. And honestly, just trying to do the right thing. If I can sense that someone is trying to do the right thing, even though I might disagree with them, I've got respect for that person, okay? And that's where I would fall. Obviously, I don't know any of those individuals personally. I've never worked with any of them before, so it's very hard for me to take what I see on TV and then interpret how I would support or not support some of these individuals. But those are my values.
Question number 11. To what extent should social welfare programs be extended to illegal aliens? Please explain your position.
0. I think as soon as someone enters the country, if someone enters the country illegally and they shouldn't be, we're obviously documenting them in order to get them welfare. So if we know who they are, they should be sent back. The recent bills where we were giving the government quotas of the tens of thousands of people we're allowed to allow in before we even capped it, it was just ridiculous, right? So I don't support any welfare spending on illegal immigrants. As soon as they come back, they should be sent back to their country. Unaccompanied children, you know, there are some real serious issues that need to be talked about. You know, unaccompanied children, human trafficking. When children arrive unaccompanied that are illegal as well, you know, we can't just put them on a bus, drop them off on the other side of the border wall and say, good luck to you. You know, like they need to be taken back to the Mexican government and have the Mexican officials figure out what to do with them. But, you know, so there's some nuance and you can be responsible with how you do it. But at the end of the day, if we empower people to break the law, they will continue to break the law.
Question number 12. What should be done to balance the budget and reduce the national debt?
We have to start saying no a lot. And, you know, a lot of people ask me, what are you going to be able to get done as a freshman congressman the day you arrive in Washington, D.C.? You're not going to have any, you know, influential chairmanships. You're not going to have the experience under the belt. There's going to be the learning curve, just figuring out how the process works, right? So I get asked that a lot. What would you be able to get done in your first year, you know? At the end of the day, the federal government is too large. It spends too much money on too many things. There are too many federal agencies. And so quite frankly, a lot of what's being passed right now, it just all needs to be told no. So in my eyes, the success is not going to come from what I managed to create, and I will create something because I get results. But what am I able to have the courage, like, do I have the courage to stand there and say no when it's unpopular to do so? And we need more people in the Freedom Caucus on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., who are willing to say no to continuing resolutions, willing to say no to raising the debt ceiling, and ultimately stand their ground and force change to happen.
Question 13. Should we Should we remain in the United Nations? Please explain.
I think the United Nations has been hijacked, and so the Security Council is so ineffective. Like China and Russia both have veto power. There's no, it doesn't serve our best interests. Okay, so once again, along with NATO, I don't think it's beneficial to us anymore. I think it's just traditional, and we are the leader of the free world. We have the largest economy still in the world. We have the greatest military in the world. We can build a new alliance that people will want to be a part of. But if we wait and we allow what happens right now to continue for the next couple of decades, we're not going to have that kind of leverage or influence anymore. So no.
Question number 14. What are your thoughts on the government response to the COVID crisis? For example, business closures, travel restrictions, and individual mandates.
I believe that the government's responsibility is to inform the public, not to rule the public. So what we were seeing is, as far as mask mandates, vaccine mandates, shutting down things, no. The individual citizens can make their own health decisions. They can analyze the risks themselves and take care of themselves appropriately. All right, the federal government, we should not be allowing, if we allow the federal government to tell us how to make our own health decisions, what's next? What comes next? We're being institutionalized, right? And I didn't wake up to this immediately because I was in the Army when this all kicked off. And for anyone who served, you know that when you sign on the dotted line, you give your life to the country, you kind of give away some of your individual rights for a season because that's how the military operates. There's a structure of command that has to be there. And you don't have all the same rights, so you get pumped full of shots, and it's not something I like, right? But I was kind of institutionalized that idea. But what was amazing is I started looking at the people on the civilian side of the house, private citizens, and they were under the same restrictions that I was in the military. It was a given that I was going to have restrictions, but it was amazing to me that people were getting in line and just allowing the government to tell them what to do, and they were private citizens. They didn't owe anything to the government, so totally against it.
Question 15. In your opinion, what are the most critical issues facing Americans today, and what should be done about it?
So, I mean, I'm not going to beat on the border drum too much because I think we're all on the same page, but the border this is a core element of our sovereignty and our ability to protect ourselves and our ability to, just have a safe community, right? And if we can't control who is coming and going across the border, then are we really a sovereign nation? So obviously that is an emergency issue right now. Close behind that is the national debt. If we do not balance the budget and bring the debt, start paying down the debt, it's going to destroy us faster than Iran, Russia, or China ever could. We are mortgaging ourselves to socialism. We are mortgaging ourselves to autocracy. And if we don't do something about it now, it'll be too late. And like I said earlier, I'm tired of waiting around on somebody else to start pushing back. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to take a long haul, and it's going to take some fight, right? But that's why we need people who are bold and willing to take on the impossible. This race, when I started this, everybody's like, man, that's impossible. How could you possibly do that? We've got a 50-50 shot, right? Getting into Congress, I'm going to take that same approach and be bold and take on the things that everybody says are impossible because they need to be done. If we give up now, then it's going to be too late.
Question number 16. What would you do to address the issue of insider trading by members of Congress?
So, where there's smoke, there's fire, typically, right? So you look at the financial returns or the net worth of these members of Congress, and they go in dirt poor, and then they walk away with tens of, and I'm not talking about my opponent necessarily. I'm just saying in general, right? That walking away millionaires, it's kind of disturbing to see. Having not been in the inside, I don't know exactly how it all works, but I believe that we need to elect people who aren't in it for the money, right? And how do you know that someone's in it for the money or they're in it for themselves as opposed to just trying to serve, right? Are they humble? Are they truly humble? Do they make themselves available to you? Do they recognize their deficiencies, their weaknesses, right? What are their values? Like, these are things that if you're in a room with somebody and you talk to them, you can get a sense for without having read everything there is to know about them, right? And so I would be totally in favor and push for any legislation that realigns the incentives of our elected officials with the people. And so blocking insider trading, I mean, I would have to think a little bit harder about how we could possibly do that. I'm sure there's a lot of ways. People have already thought about it. But yes, part of passion of mine is making Congress more accountable to you.
Last prepared question, question number 17.
Okay.
Please explain your position on term limits.
So, tying into the last subject, we need to shift power away from money in our elections towards voters, all right? When our elected officials come back to visit, ask yourself, are they visiting me? Are they visiting voters, the people who show up at town halls and candidate forums? Or are they visiting institutions or wealthy elites that have a lot of money? And so I think that's something that we can watch out for, and that will tell us a lot about what's happening. Term limits wouldn't be necessary if campaign finance laws were reformed, all right? Under the current campaign finance laws, I believe that term limits are necessary. Now, not everybody in the room is going to agree with me on that, and that's okay. That's where I stand on it. If we can reform campaign finance laws to make our elected members of Congress less dependent on the donors and more dependent on you, the voters, then term limits wouldn't be necessary because the people can decide. If they like someone, they'll keep them. And as soon as they don't like them anymore, they'll get rid of them, you know? My personal promise to you is I will only serve 4 terms. It doesn't matter how much you like me, I'm walking away after 4 terms because somebody has to lead by example and prove that it can be done. And that is a promise that I have 100% control over, that no one else can leverage me on. Nobody else has control over that except for me. And so that is my promise to you because that is a promise that I can keep and I'm not afraid to make it.
Thank you, Jared. We're going to take a break and gather audience questions. First question, to what extent should the U.S. extend support to the state of Israel?
It's a great question. I get asked this a lot. I am not in favor of sending foreign military aid to any foreign country. Israel is not a member of the United States of America. It is not a state. It is a foreign country. There are biblical arguments for why we should support the Israeli state. Let me summarize my thoughts on this. I follow Jesus Christ. He is my Lord and Savior. He is the God of the Old Testament. At times he led the Israelites, and at times he punished them, right? I'm not going to take a stance on what God thinks. God can do whatever he wants, and we don't control him. He is almighty and all-powerful, and he will make sure that everything is right and just the way it needs to be. Now, that being said, I don't believe that the state, the political entity of Israel, the state of Israel, is necessarily synonymous with the nation of Israel in the Old Testament. Benjamin Netanyahu is not a prophet, okay? So that is where I stand on that. I'm leaving it in God's hands. He can decide what's right, and that's that.
Question number 2, would you join the Freedom Caucus, and what are your thoughts?
Yes, I would join the Freedom Caucus. This is the group in Congress that has the most courage and is willing to put up the biggest fight on just common sense issues, okay? They have the courage to say no to the status quo. If you enjoy the status quo in Washington, D.C., then just don't vote for me because I'm going to make some noise. I'm going to be one of those guys that's holding up Congress over their spending bill because it's not right, okay? And if we, at the end of the day, like if we continue to allow Congress to do what it's doing right now, it's going to get worse. What we've been doing the last 20 years doesn't work. Look at where we are today, all right? We need to get more people with that Freedom Caucus mentality into the House. That's why this race is so important in the primary. We have the choice. We are all against the Biden administration, but we need to make sure that we have the right Republicans in the House that are actually going to get results.
Last question. Where do you stand on foreign nationals buying property around military installations?
Oh, I'm totally against it. We have to do a better job of controlling who owns property in the United States, all right? I, as a U.S. citizen, can't go to most most foreign countries and actually purchase property. Every nation has their own laws that govern who can own property. And quite frankly, the federal government is failing in that regard, in that we're not blocking foreign nationals from owning property in the United States. So It's something that needs to be tackled. We've got to take care of it. Even in Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska, Fort Wainwright, Alaska, we had Chinese non-U.S. citizens buying property around Fort Wainwright, blowing through the gates and acting like they didn't know where they were, taking pictures of stuff and everything. I'm not trying to say that as a disparaging comment towards people of Chinese ethnicity, but what I'm saying is we've got to do more to protect ourselves, because right now we are very vulnerable to sabotage and to espionage, and we've got to do more about it. So I would totally support that.
Jared, thank you for your time and for being here. That was the conclusion of the audience questions. You have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
All right. Once again, I'll be very brief. Thank you for being here. My 2 more promises I'll make. So one promise is 4 terms, and that's it. Doesn't matter what you like me. You can be upset about that if you want. But second promise is when you show up in the office in D.C. or in College Station or in Austin, the big desk with the big fancy chair behind it, computer or whatever, that desk is for you, not for me. I'm never sitting in that chair. All right, my workstation is going to be in the corner somewhere or with the staff, and I'm going to sit in the little chair when you come to visit because I'm accountable to you. This is a job interview, right? I'm not trying to lead you or educate you or convince you of anything. I'm here to position myself as, hey, I would like to represent you, and let me know if you'd like that. So that's the second promise. Third promise is if you show up to stuff like this throughout the year, regularly, town halls, candidate forums, Republican women, Republican club meetings, you will see my face, you will shake my hand, you will see me multiple times a year. I will be here with you because you are the people who are electing me, right? And so that's my third promise is if you're showing up to stuff, it may not be every month, but you will see me. There's 13 counties, a lot of places to get to, but you will see me around. You'll have my phone number. That's the way it should be as a representative. So anyways, with that, I thank you for your support. Please go grab your friends and take them to vote. Spread the word. Grassroots, spreading the word does way more than money, all right? We don't need a lot of money. We got enough money to make a splash, right? But the word of mouth is the best thing that you can do to help out this campaign. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. God bless America.
Thank you.